The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and life. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives, a hunter whose code of honor predates the Republic itself, whose technology rivals the finest Separatist innovations, and whose very presence disrupts the careful balance between light and dark? The Clone Wars raged across Kashyyyk's towering Roshar forests, but neither Jedi nor Sith could have foreseen what was about to crash into the Shadowlands below. The sky above Kashyyyk tore open with violence that had nothing to do with the war. A Republic Venator-class star destroyer, the Resolute Dawn, executed an emergency hyperspace reversion above the Wookiee homeworld, its damaged hyperdrive spewing exotic particles into real space. At that exact moment, something else emerged from the impossible angles between dimensions, a vessel that had been traveling through its own form of faster-than-light transit when the spatial collision occurred. The Yautja hunting ship was sleek, predatory, built for a single occupant. Its hull bore the scars of 100 hunts across 100 worlds, marked with glyphs in a language no Republic database had ever recorded. When the two vessels' exit vectors intersected, reality screamed. The Predator's ship careened out of control, atmosphere streaming from hull breaches as alien systems failed in the violent dimensional translation. Emergency thrusters fired erratically, trying to compensate for gravitational forces that shouldn't exist, physics that operated on slightly different principles than the universe it had just left. Commander Gree stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, watching his sensor officer's confused expression with growing concern. "Talk to me, Lieutenant." "Sir, we've got an unknown contact. Fell out of hyperspace right on top of us. No, wait, it's not a hyperspace signature. I've never seen readings like this." The clone officer's fingers danced across his console. "Whatever it is, it's heading for the surface. Fast." Through the viewport, Gree caught a glimpse, just a flash of angular hull, glowing heat trails, and then it was gone, plummeting toward Kashyyyk's endless forest canopy. "Get a fighter squadron on it. I want to know what that was before it becomes the Separatists' problem." But the Yautja ship was already past the point where interception mattered. It screamed through Kashyyyk's upper atmosphere, ablative armor burning away in sheets of superheated metal. The Predator inside, designated by his clan as Syra, the Silent Death, fought his dying vessel with the calm of a warrior who had faced death before and found it wanting. His mandibles clicked in frustration as systems failed around him. The dimensional breach had damaged more than just the hull. His communication array was slag. 3 of his backup weapons had been destroyed when the armory compartment explosively decompressed. The ship's AI was cycling through error codes in a language that this galaxy's computers wouldn't understand for another 1,000 years. But Syra was alive. His plasma caster still functioned. His wrist blades were intact. His biomask's multiple vision modes flickered but held. And most importantly, his cloaking device was merely offline, not destroyed. It would require recalibration, but it would work again. The ship clipped a massive Roshar tree, the impact sending a shower of bark and branches cascading into the darkness below. Syra activated the emergency crash protocols, and the pilot's cocoon filled with impact-absorbing foam as the vessel plowed through layer after layer of forest canopy. When it finally hit the ground in Kashyyyk's Shadowlands, that perpetual twilight realm beneath the main Wookiee cities, the impact crater glowed with residual heat. Steam rose from damaged systems as the forest itself seemed to recoil from this foreign intrusion. For several minutes, nothing moved. Then the ship's side hatch blew outward with a hiss of pressurized gas and a warrior stepped into a galaxy far, far away. Syra was 8 feet of corded muscle and predatory grace, his mottled skin already adapting to the dim light of the Shadowlands. He wore minimal armor, a hunter's garb designed for mobility rather than protection. His biomask gleamed dully in the filtered sunlight, its multiple lenses adjusting to analyze this new environment. He clicked through his vision modes. Thermal revealed the ambient heat of Kashyyyk's humid air, the warm signatures of small creatures fleeing from the crash site. Electromagnetic showed the ship's dying power core, and something else, distant energy signatures that pulsed with an unfamiliar rhythm. The air here was thick, heavy with moisture and the scent of growing things. Syra's mandibles flared as he tasted the atmosphere, his species' natural hunting instincts cataloging 1,000 details. This was a hunter's paradise, dense cover, multiple elevation levels, abundant prey. And then he heard the first sounds of war. Distant explosions rumbled through the forest. The high-pitched whine of energy weapons. And something else, roars that spoke of rage and defiance, coming from massive throats. Syra's biomask automatically analyzed the audio signatures and overlaid tactical data across his vision. A battle. Multiple combatants. Technology levels, advanced. Threat assessment, high. His mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. He'd come to this world, this galaxy, by accident, torn from his hunt by forces beyond even Yautja understanding. His ship was destroyed, his communication with his clan severed. By all rights, he should have died in the dimensional breach. But he hadn't. And now he stood in a forest at war, surrounded by unknown species fighting for reasons he didn't yet understand. Syra activated his wrist computer, calling up what little data his ship's sensors had gathered before impact. The readings were fragmented, corrupted by the dimensional translation, but enough remained to paint a basic picture. This world was called Kashyyyk. The dominant indigenous species were tall, covered in fur, and apparently caught in the middle of a conflict between two galactic powers. None of which mattered to a Yautja hunter. What mattered was that somewhere in this forest, there was worthy prey. He could feel it in his blood, the ancient instinct that had driven his species to hunt across countless worlds. This place held warriors. Fighters. Challenges worthy of his skill. He reached up and adjusted his biomask, activating the cloaking device's diagnostic mode. 6 hours until recalibration complete. Until then, he would hunt the old way, with cunning, patience, and the understanding that the best prey never saw death coming until it was too late. Syra checked his weapons, plasma caster fully charged, wrist blades sharp, combo stick intact. His healing kit had survived the crash. The smart disc in his belt harness hummed with readiness. Above, through gaps in the canopy, he could see massive structures built into the trees themselves, cities suspended hundreds of meters above the forest floor. Smoke rose from several locations. The sounds of battle intensified. And then, much closer, he heard something moving through the underbrush. Multiple somethings. Bipedal, judging by the gait. Careless, judging by the noise. Armed, judging by the metallic clicks and whirs of weapons being readied. Syra melted into the shadows of his crashed ship, every muscle ready, every sense focused. He didn't know what was coming. But whatever it was about to become his introduction to this new galaxy. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The first patrol of Trandoshan slavers entered the crash site with weapons drawn, their reptilian eyes gleaming with predatory interest. They'd come to the Shadowlands hunting Wookiees. Kashyyyk's native inhabitants made excellent slaves, and the chaos of the Clone Wars provided perfect cover for their operations. What they found instead was a crater, a ship unlike anything in Republic or Separatist databases, and the certainty that something very dangerous had just arrived on their hunting ground. They would be right. They would also be dead within the next 3 minutes. The lead Trandoshan, a scarred veteran named Kashyyyk, raised his clawed hand, signaling his hunting party to halt. 5 slavers total, each armed with stun rifles and neural whips, equipment designed to subdue rather than kill. Living cargo was more profitable than corpses, after all. "What is that?" one of the younger hunters hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air. The reptilian slavers had excellent senses, evolved for hunting in environments not unlike Kashyyyk's Shadowlands. Kashyyyk approached the crashed vessel cautiously, his scaled head tilting as he examined the alien hull. The metal was like nothing he'd seen, smooth in places, ridged in others, covered in symbols that seemed more artistic than functional. Scorch marks traced the ship's violent descent, but the underlying structure remained intact. Strong. Advanced. Salvage, Kashyyyk decided, his voice a gravelly rasp. Whatever species built this, the technology alone will fetch. He never finished the sentence. The first Trandoshan died without understanding what had happened. One moment he was moving toward the ship's open hatch, the next his throat was opening in a spray of green blood as something invisible slashed through scale and muscle with surgical precision. The body hit the ground before the others even registered the attack. Contact! Kashyyyk roared, bringing his rifle up and firing wildly into the space where his companion had just died. Energy bolts splashed against trees and evaporated into the humid air, hitting nothing. Syra had already moved. The Yautja's cloaking device was still offline, but the Shadowland's perpetual gloom provided natural cover that his species had exploited for millennia. He'd studied the Trandoshans for exactly 17 seconds before initiating his attack, enough time to assess their armor, identify weak points, and determine that these reptilian hunters operated with pack tactics but lacked discipline. They were hunters, yes. But they were not warriors. The second Trandoshan spun toward a sound behind him, his last mistake. Syra's wrist blades punched through the slaver's back and emerged from his chest in a spray of viscera. The Predator lifted the dying Trandoshan off his feet, mandibles spreading as he studied his prey's death throes with clinical interest. Then he hurled the corpse into another slaver, sending both tumbling into the underbrush. Spread out. Kashyyyk bellowed, his predatory instincts warring with his rising panic. Whatever was killing his hunting party moved like nothing he'd encountered. Fast. Silent. Efficient. Thermal vision. Find it. The remaining 3 Trandoshans activated their optical enhancements, scanning for heat signatures. In the Shadowland's uniform warmth, most creatures stood out clearly against the ambient temperature. But Syra's biomask had already analyzed their equipment and compensated. He'd adjusted his body temperature using his armor's environmental controls, blending into the thermal background. To the Trandoshan's enhanced vision, he was just another patch of warm air in the humid forest. The third slaver died when something sharp and circular whistled through the air, embedding itself in his skull with enough force to lift him off his feet. The smart disc had found its mark, then returned to its master's hand with a wet sound of separating bone and brain matter. Kashyyyk made a decision born of survival instinct. Fall back. Back to the... Syra dropped from the branches above, landing on the fleeing Trandoshan with his full weight. The impact drove the slaver to the ground, vertebrae cracking under the Predator's mass. Before the last hunter could react, Syra's plasma caster, now online after its automated combat boot sequence, tracked and fired. The shoulder-mounted weapon unleashed a bolt of superheated plasma that struck the final Trandoshan center mass. The energy discharge was so intense that the slaver's chest cavity simply ceased to exist, replaced by a smoking hole that cauterized even as it killed. Silence returned to the crash site. Syra stood among the corpses, his breathing steady and controlled. 5 kills in less than 2 minutes. Efficient. Clean. But as he examined his prey more closely, his mandibles clicked in something approaching disappointment. These were not warriors. They were hunters, yes, equipped with adequate technology and reasonable tactics. But they lacked honor. He'd watched them approach his ship with greed in their movements, heard them speak of salvage and profit rather than challenge and glory. Still, first blood in a new galaxy deserved acknowledgement. Syra knelt beside the leader, Kashyyy's body still twitched with fading neural impulses, and extended his wrist blades. With practiced efficiency, he removed the Trandoshan's skull, stripping flesh and scale to reveal bone. He held it up to the filtered light, examining the structure, the teeth designed for tearing meat, the eye sockets that had housed predatory vision. A trophy. Not his finest, but a beginning. He was attaching the skull to his belt when he heard something that made every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. Footsteps. Heavy. Rhythmic. Multiple contacts, moving through the forest with purpose and barely restrained violence. And with them, a sound he'd never heard before, a deep, resonant roaring that spoke of rage and grief in equal measure. Syra activated his remaining functional sensors, and his biomask painted a tactical picture that made his blood sing with the possibility of real combat. 7 contacts incoming. Each standing over 2 meters tall, covered in dense fur, moving with the ground-eating lope of natural warriors. They carried weapons, primitive by his standards, but wielded with clear expertise. Bowcasters, his database identified after a moment of analysis, energy-based projectile weapons that combined mechanical and technological elements. But it was their physicality that caught his attention. These creatures were massive, powerfully built, and they moved through the Shadowlands like they owned it. This was their territory, and they knew it intimately. The lead creature, a Wookiee warrior named Gumbaka, stopped at the edge of the crash site, his keen eyes taking in the scene instantly. 5 dead Trandashans. A destroyed vessel of unknown origin. Blood and violence painted across the forest floor in a language every warrior understood. Gumbaka's lip curled, revealing impressive fangs. The Trandashans were old enemies, slavers who had preyed on Wookiee families for generations. Seeing them dead should have brought satisfaction. But something was wrong. The kills were too clean, too professional. Trandashan slavers were dangerous in groups, but these 5 had been dismantled with terrifying efficiency. And the way their bodies were positioned, scattered, caught mid-retreat, some killed from behind, spoke of a hunter far more skilled than the reptilian slavers. Ruarg, Gumbaka rumbled, the sound translating roughly to, "Something else is here." His fellow Wookiees fanned out, bowcasters raised, their warrior instinct screaming warnings that their eyes couldn't confirm. The forest felt different. The air held a tension that had nothing to do with the battle raging in the cities above. Syra watched from his concealment, his biomask analyzing these new arrivals with far more interest than the Trandashans had warranted. These were warriors. Real ones. Their movement spoke of training and experience. Their weapons were maintained with care. And the way they moved as a unit, communicating with gesture and growl, showed pack cohesion that reminded him of his own clan hunts. Worthy prey had just announced itself. But something gave him pause. The fury these creatures displayed toward the dead Trandashans wasn't the anger of interrupted hunters. It was the rage of protectors who had found enemies in their territory. They weren't here for sport or glory. They were defending something. Syra's honor code was ancient and absolute, passed down through countless generations of Yautja tradition. Among its many tenets was one that superseded even the thrill of the hunt: never kill those who cannot fight back, never strike down protectors of the innocent, never dishonor the hunt by preying on the weak. These creatures were defending their home. That made them warriors, yes, but warriors with a purpose beyond combat itself. The Predator remained motionless as the Wookiees examined the crash site. One of them, a younger warrior with reddish-brown fur, discovered the Trandashan skull attached to Syra's earlier position and let out a bark of confusion and alarm. Gumbaka took the skull, turning it over in his massive hands. Then his eyes swept the Shadowlands with new understanding. Whatever had killed these slavers had taken a trophy. That meant intelligence. Purpose. And possibly, honor. The Wookiee warrior moved to the crashed ship, examining its strange hull. He'd fought in the Clone Wars, had seen Separatist technology and Republic innovations. This vessel was neither. It was something else entirely, something from beyond the known galaxy. And its pilot was still here. Watching. Waiting. Gumbaka made a decision. He raised one massive hand and roared a challenge into the Shadowlands, not a threat, but an invitation. Show yourself, hunter. Let us see what manner of warrior has come to Kashyyyk. Syra's mandibles spread. These creatures had honor. They deserved honesty in return. He stepped from the shadows, deactivating the last of his camouflage protocols. 8 feet of alien predator materialized into visibility, his biomask gleaming, his wrist blades still wet with Trandoshan blood, the fresh skull trophy hanging from his belt. The Wookiees' bowcasters snapped up instantly, trained on this new threat. But not one of them fired. They were warriors, not murderers. They would give this stranger a chance to explain himself. If he could. Syra and Gumbaka faced each other across the crash site, alien warrior and Wookiee defender, separated by language and species but united by something older than either of their civilizations. The recognition of one warrior by another. The standoff lasted exactly 7 heartbeats. Syra stood perfectly still, his biomask's multiple lenses analyzing every micro-expression in the Wookiee's body language. His plasma caster remained offline, a conscious choice. Raising weapons now would be interpreted as aggression, and while he could certainly kill several of these warriors before they brought him down, that wasn't the outcome he sought. These creatures had honor. They deserved respect. Gumbaka's keen eyes traced every detail of this alien warrior. The biomask that obscured features but couldn't hide intent. The trophy skull still dripping Trandoshan blood. The wrist-mounted blades that had clearly done brutal work. The shoulder weapon that looked disturbingly similar to a plasma cannon, though smaller and far more sophisticated than anything the Separatists fielded. But what struck the Wookiee warrior most was the stance. This alien stood like a hunter who had just made a kill, not defensive, not aggressive, simply present. Claiming responsibility. Waiting for judgment. Whyag, Gumbaka rumbled, the sound carrying nuances that Basic couldn't translate. Roughly, you killed the scale skins. Why? Syra's translator, built into his biomask, immediately began processing the Wookiees' vocalizations. It was sophisticated technology, designed to decode alien languages through pattern recognition and contextual analysis. But these sounds were complex, layered with meaning that went beyond simple vocabulary. His mask's display showed, translation progress, 23%. Insufficient data. The Predator needed to communicate, but language barriers had never stopped Yautja from making themselves understood. He reached down slowly, telegraphing every movement, and tapped the Trandoshan skull on his belt. Then he pointed at the dead slavers. The gesture was universal, they were prey. I hunted them. One of the younger Wookiees growled something sharp and raised his bowcaster higher, but Gumbaka barked a command that silenced the outburst. The elder warrior stepped closer, close enough that Syra could smell the musk of his fur, the scent of weapons oil and smoke from the battles above. Gumbaka pointed at the Trandoshan corpses, then swept his massive arm toward the forest canopy above, toward the distant sounds of war. His vocalization was unmistakable even without translation, there is bigger war here. These scale skins are nothing. Why are you here? Syra turned and gestured at his crashed ship, then made a diving motion with his clawed hand, mimicking the vessel's violent descent. The message was clear, I didn't choose to come here. The Wookiee's eyes narrowed. An accident, then. This warrior had fallen from the sky, literally, and found himself in the middle of a conflict he didn't understand. But that didn't explain the dead Trandoshans, the collected trophy, the readiness to kill. Gumbaka made a decision that would echo through Kashyyyk's history. He lowered his bowcaster. The gesture rippled through his warriors. Slowly, reluctantly, the other Wookiees lowered their weapons. Not holstered, they weren't fools, but no longer actively targeting the alien. Syra's mandibles clicked in approval. These warriors understood the language of respect. He reached up and, in a gesture that few species ever witnessed, disengaged his biomask seals. The device hissed as it detached, revealing his face for the first time. The Wookiees recoiled instinctively. The face behind the mask was nightmarish by most species standards, for mandibles surrounding a mouth filled with metal-sharp teeth, skin mottled in patterns of green and gray, eyes that held predatory intelligence and absolute confidence. But Gumbaka saw past the alien features to the intent behind them. The removal of the mask was a gesture of trust. Warriors did not expose their faces to potential enemies unless they were willing to accept vulnerability. The Wookiee warrior growled something to his companions, then reached up and removed his own bandolier, the Wookiee equivalent of lowering one's guard. He stepped closer, close enough that either could kill the other in a heartbeat, and extended one massive hand. Syra understood immediately. He gripped the Wookiee's forearm in the warrior's grasp, feeling the incredible strength in those fur-covered muscles. Gumbaka returned the grip, his powerful fingers wrapping around the Predator's armored forearm. A pact. Not alliance, not friendship, but acknowledgement. You are a warrior. I am a warrior. We will not fight today. The moment was interrupted by an explosion that lit up the Shadowlands like a miniature sun. All heads turned skyward as a massive fireball bloomed in the canopy above, followed by the scream of ion engines and the distinctive whine of failing repulsors. A Separatist drop ship was going down. It crashed through layer after layer of Rasha branches, hull breaking apart as it fell. Debris rained down, twisted metal, sparking circuits, and bodies. Battle droids, Syra's enhanced vision identified. Dozens of them, still active even as they plummeted into the Shadowlands. The drop ship's main hull section hit the forest floor half a kilometer away, but the scattered droids were landing much closer. Syra's biomask, still in his hand, showed thermal signatures activating all around them. The mechanical soldiers were already moving, reforming into combat units with the efficiency of programmed killers. Gumbaka roared a warning to his warriors. The Wookiees instantly formed a defensive perimeter, bowcasters tracking multiple targets. But they were 7 warriors facing potentially dozens of battle droids in terrain that offered excellent cover for an ambush. Syra reattached his biomask with a precise click. His tactical display immediately lit up with target data. 23 active battle droids within 200 meters. More coming online every second. Standard B1 models primarily, but his sensors detected at least 3 larger signatures, B2 super battle droids, heavily armored and carrying wrist-mounted blasters that could shred organic targets. The Wookiees were brave, skilled, and powerful. But they were about to be overwhelmed by superior numbers. The first wave of battle droids emerged from the smoke and foliage, their photoreceptors glowing red in the Shadowlands gloom. Roger, Roger, one of them chirped in its distinctly mechanical voice. Organic life forms detected. Opening fire. Blaster bolts lit up the forest. The Wookiees returned fire instantly, their bowcasters sending energy quarrels that punched through droid armor with devastating effect. 2 B1s went down immediately, their chassis sparking and twitching. But more kept coming. Syra faced a decision that would define his place in this new galaxy. These Wookiees were warriors, yes, but they were also defenders. They fought not for glory or trophies, but to protect their families in the cities above. The machines attacking them were not alive, they had no honor, no spirit, no challenge to offer a true hunter. By Yautja code, this was not his fight. The droids were not worthy prey. The Wookiees had not asked for his aid. He owed them nothing beyond the respect already shown. But Syra had also witnessed something in those few moments of communication with Gumbaka. These warriors had shown him mercy when they could have attacked. They had honored the gesture of vulnerability when he removed his mask. They had treated him not as a monster, but as a fellow fighter. And warriors who showed honor deserved honor in return. His plasma caster came online with a high-pitched whine. The targeting system locked onto a B2 super battle droid that was advancing on the Wookiee's flank. Syra's mandibles spread as his finger found the trigger. The plasma bolt caught the droid center mass, superheating its durasteel chassis instantly. The B2 exploded in a shower of molten metal and sparking circuits, taking out 2 B1s that had been using it for cover. The Wookiees turned in surprise, but Gumbaka understood immediately. He roared something that might have been gratitude or simply acknowledgement, then redoubled his own fire. Syra activated his cloaking device. The recalibration had completed faster than estimated, perhaps adapting to this galaxy's different physical laws. He vanished from visible sight and moved into the droid formation like death incarnate. AB-1 battle droid spun toward a thermal signature, raising its blaster rifle. Wait, what? Its head separated from its body before it could finish the automated query. Syra's wrist blades carved through droid after droid with brutal efficiency. These machines had no sense of self-preservation, no fear, no ability to adapt to a threat they couldn't see. They simply stood and fired at where they thought he was, only to die when he materialized somewhere else. It was slaughter, not hunting. But it was necessary slaughter. His smart disc flew from his hand, ricocheting off 3 droids in rapid succession before returning to his grasp. His combo stick extended with a metallic snap, the spear-like weapon punching through chassis and circuitry with equal ease. Gumbaka and his warriors fought with renewed ferocity, their bowcasters finding targets with deadly precision. The Wookiee elder noticed how the invisible warriors' attacks created openings in the droid formation, flanks left exposed, cover positions abandoned, command units isolated and destroyed. This alien didn't just kill. He hunted tactically, breaking the enemy's cohesion. AB-2 super battle droid targeted a young Wookiee who had ventured too far forward, its wrist blasters charging for a kill shot. Before Gumbaka could roar a warning, Syra materialized behind the droid and drove both wrist blades through its processor core. The B-2 collapsed, its systems dying in mid-fire. The young Wookiee, Jakyun, stared at the empty air where his savior had just been, then back at Gumbaka with wide eyes. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When the last droid fell, its photoreceptors dimming to black, the forest filled with the sounds of Wookiee breathing and the soft clicking of Syra's mandibles. The Predator deactivated his cloak, standing among the mechanical corpses. His armor was splattered with hydraulic fluid and droid lubricant, but he was uninjured. The Wookiees had fared well too, minor wounds only, nothing serious. Gumbaka approached Syra slowly, his massive chest heaving from exertion. The Wookiee warrior looked at the destruction the alien had wrought, then at his own warriors, all alive, all standing, because this hunter had chosen to fight beside them. The elder Wookiee placed one massive hand on Syra's shoulder. The gesture transcended language. You are pack now. You are tribe. In Wookiee culture, such a gesture was sacred. It meant life debt, though Syra didn't yet understand the full implications. His translator finally chimed, translation progress, 67%. Basic comprehension achieved. Gumbaka's next vocalization came through with surprising clarity, come. Elders must see. You, friend of Wookiees now. Syra tilted his head, considering. He'd come to this galaxy by accident, crashed into a war he didn't understand, and now found himself adopted by a species of warriors who valued honor as much as his own people did. The hunt he'd planned for those Trandashans suddenly felt very small compared to what this forest offered. A galactic war. Multiple factions. Endless challenges. And warriors who recognized strength when they saw it. His mandibles clicked in what might have been acceptance. He gestured toward the canopy above, toward the sounds of continuing battle, and then at himself. The meaning was clear, I will see what this war has to offer. The journey through Kashyyyk's Shadowlands to the Wookiee city of Kashyyyk took 3 hours of climbing that would have killed most species. The Roshar trees were massive beyond comprehension, their trunks wider than some starships, their branches creating highways hundreds of meters above the forest floor. The Wookiees moved through this vertical environment with practiced ease, their powerful arms propelling them up natural handholds and carved pathways with effortless grace. Syra kept pace without difficulty. His species had evolved hunting in varied terrains, and his enhanced physiology treated the climb as merely another challenge to overcome. His claws found purchase where smooth bark should have offered none. His legs drove him upward with coiled power that impressed even the Wookiees. Gumbaka led the way, occasionally glancing back to ensure their alien companions still followed. Each time, Syra was exactly where a warrior should be, maintaining formation, watching for threats, moving with the fluid efficiency of a natural predator. As they climbed higher, the sounds of battle grew louder. Blaster fire echoed through the canopy. Explosions rattled the branches. And through it all, the distinctive roars of Wookiees fighting and dying for their homeworld created a symphony of war that made Syra's blood sing with anticipation. His biomask sensors painted an increasingly complex tactical picture. Republic clone troopers engaged Separatist battle droids across multiple levels of the city. Droid gunships strafed Wookiee defensive positions. And somewhere in the chaos, his readings detected energy signatures unlike anything else, concentrated, powerful, moving with purpose through the battlefield. He flagged those signatures for further analysis. They emerged from the Shadowlands into Kashyyyk proper as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The city was a marvel of organic architecture, structures grown and shaped from living wood, platforms suspended between trees, catwalks and rope bridges connecting a civilization that existed entirely above the ground. But it was also a city at war. Smoke rose from a dozen fires. Entire sections of walkway had collapsed, leaving jagged wounds in the city's infrastructure. Clone troopers in distinctive green-marked armor manned defensive positions alongside Wookiee warriors, firing down at advancing droid columns. The air smelled of ozone, burning wood, and death. A group of clone troopers spotted the ascending Wookiees and immediately raised their weapons, standard protocol when unidentified contacts approached during active combat. But when they saw what accompanied Gumbaka's party, every trooper froze. "What the hell is that?" one clone breathed, his DC-15 blaster carbine tracking Syra's movements. "Hold fire," another trooper commanded, a sergeant, judging by his armor markings. "The Wookiees aren't shooting at it. Maybe it's friendly." "Friendly? Sir, that thing looks like it eats friendly for breakfast." Gumbaka roared something in Shiriwook, and one of the clones, apparently familiar with the Wookiee language, translated. He says the hunter killed Trandashans and droids in the Shadowlands. Fought beside them. The sergeant's helmet turned toward Syra, his body language screaming uncertainty. First contact protocol said to detain unknown species for intelligence debriefing. Combat protocol said anything not Republic aligned was potentially hostile. But practical battlefield experience said that if the Wookiees trusted this creature, maybe it deserved the benefit of doubt. "Keep weapons ready," the sergeant decided. "But don't fire unless it makes a hostile move. And someone get Commander Gree on the comm, he's going to want to see this." Syra observed the clone troopers with intense curiosity. His biomask analyzed their armor, advanced by this galaxy's standards, powered components integrated with protective plates, communication systems built into their helmets. But what fascinated him most was their faces. Or rather, the same face, repeated across every soldier he could see. His translator picked up their conversations, and his tactical computer began assembling data. These warriors were clones, artificial soldiers grown and trained for war. The concept wasn't entirely foreign to Yautja understanding, but the scale was staggering. An entire army of identical warriors, fighting across a galaxy. Were they warriors? Or merely weapons? The philosophical question would have to wait. Gumbaka was guiding him deeper into Kashyyyk, toward the city's heart where the Wookiee elders maintained their council chambers. Citizens, mostly females and young, fled at the sight of Syra, their instinctive fear of his predatory appearance overriding curiosity. He noticed that Gumbaka's warriors positioned themselves between him and the civilians. Not threatening, but protective. Making sure their new ally understood that non-combatants were off-limits. Syra appreciated the clarity. In his culture, the distinction between warrior and innocent was absolute. These Wookiees shared that understanding. They reached the council chamber, a massive hollowed Rosher trunk carved with generations of history, just as three figures emerged from within. Two were Wookiees, elderly and bearing scars that spoke of long lives filled with battle. The third made T'Chira's entire body tense with predatory focus. The human was small by warrior standards, but his presence filled the space like a sun fills a star system. He wore robes of brown and tan, simple garments that concealed rather than revealed. But it was the weapon at his belt that captured T'Chira's attention, a cylindrical hilt of metal and crystal that his sensors identified as containing enormous energy potential. And around this human, the very air seemed to shimmer with something his biomask couldn't properly quantify. Not heat, not electromagnetic radiation, but something else. Something that made his predatory instincts scream both warning and interest. Quinlan Vos, Jedi Master and General of the Republic's forces on Kashyyyk, studied the alien warrior with eyes that had seen horrors across 100 battlefields. His connection to the Force immediately registered T'Chira's presence as something profoundly wrong, not evil, but foreign. Like looking at a color that didn't exist in the visible spectrum. Well, Quinlan said, his hand resting casually near his lightsaber hilt. That's new. The Wookiee elders roared questions at Gumbaka, who responded with a detailed account of the Shadowlands encounter. T'Chira's translator was now functioning well enough to catch the gist: arrival from the sky, dead Trandashans, battle against droids, warrior's honor. Chieftain Tarful, the eldest present and Kashyyyk's military leader, listened with his arms crossed, his ancient eyes never leaving T'Chira. When Gumbaka finished, Tarful rumbled something that made several Wookiees bark with what might have been laughter. Quinlan's lips twitched. He says you fight like a Wookiee who forgot to grow fur. Apparently that's a compliment. T'Chira's mandibles clicked. His translator had caught enough of Tarful's statement to understand the essence. He inclined his head in acknowledgement, a gesture of respect that translated across species barriers. Quinlan stepped closer, and T'Chira felt that strange shimmer intensify. The Jedi was reaching out with something invisible, something that pressed against T'Chira's consciousness like a physical touch without contact. The Force found nothing. Not emptiness, but absence. The Predator existed in a space where the Force flowed around rather than through. Like trying to grasp smoke with fingers made of smoke themselves. Quinlan's eyes widened slightly. You're not from here. Not from this galaxy, I mean. It wasn't a question. Somehow, this warrior in robes knew. T'Chira clicked a response through his biomask, and his translator converted it into basic: crash. Sky tear. Not choice. The translator's vocabulary was still limited, but the meaning was clear enough. Dimensional accident, forced entry into this reality, survival rather than invasion. Can you understand me? Quinlan asked, speaking slowly and clearly. T'Chira tapped his biomask and nodded. His translator chimed affirmatively. Good. That helps. Quinlan crossed his arms, his posture relaxing slightly but his awareness never dropping. I'm General Quinlan Vos, Jedi Knight of the Republic. The Wookiees say you fought beside them against Separatist droids. Is that true? T'Chira considered the question. His code compelled honesty with warriors who showed honor. He activated his biomask's holographic display and projected an image into the air, a recording from his helmet cam showing the battle in the Shadowlands. The Wookiees fighting. The droids advancing. His intervention. The gathered Wookiees murmured approval. They'd experienced the battle, but seeing it from the hunter's perspective revealed the precision of his kills, the tactical awareness, the deliberate protection of Wookiee positions. Quinlan watched with the analytical eye of a general. You're a soldier. A hunter, more accurately. Your equipment is more advanced than anything the Separatists field, and your combat efficiency. He paused. Where I come from, we'd call you a predator. What do your people call you? T'Chira's translator parsed the question and formulated a response. His voice, filtered through the biomask, emerged as a series of clicks and growls that the translator converted: Yautja. Hunter. Warrior. We take trophies. Seek worthy prey. Honor in combat. Trophies. Quinlan's eyes dropped to the Trandoshan skull on T'Chira's belt. The slavers in the Shadowlands. You killed them for sport. The accusation in the Jedi's tone was subtle but present. T'Chira met his gaze steadily, his mandibles spreading. His response came through the translator with absolute clarity: Trandoshans are hunters without honor. Prey on weak. Take slaves. Worthy of death. Tarful roared agreement, and several Wookiees joined him. The Trandoshans' crimes against their people were ancient and bitter. Quinlan's expression softened slightly. So you killed them because they were slavers, not just because you wanted trophies. T'Chira clicked negatively. His translator struggled with the nuance, but managed, killed for both. Trophy is proof. Honor in removing dishonorable hunters. Not contradiction. The Jedi absorbed this, his mind working through the implications. This alien operated on a code that valued combat prowess but also maintained ethical boundaries. Slavers were acceptable targets. The droids attacking the Wookiees warranted intervention. But there was calculation behind the violence, purpose beyond mere killing. The Republic is at war with the Separatist alliance, Quinlan explained, gesturing toward the sounds of distant combat. Those droids you fought are just the tip of the spear. There's an entire army trying to take Kashyyyk, and they won't stop until every Wookiee is dead or enslaved. If you stay here, you'll be caught in a war that's not yours. T'Chira's biomask cycled through vision modes, analyzing the city, the clone troopers, the Wookiee defenders. His sensors detected massive energy signatures in orbit, ships, dozens of them, engaged in combat above the atmosphere. This wasn't a skirmish. It was a full-scale planetary invasion. He thought of his crashed ship, his severed connection to his clan, his isolation in this alien galaxy. By every practical measure, he should salvage what he could and flee. Find a way home, or at least find a place to survive until he could establish contact with other Yautja. But when he looked at Gumbaka, at the Wookiee warriors who had accepted him without understanding what he was, at Tarful's scarred face that spoke of a lifetime defending his people, T'Chira felt something his species rarely acknowledged. Kinship. These were not just random aliens caught in a conflict. They were warriors defending their home with honor and courage. The Trandoshans were their ancient enemies, dishonorable slavers. The machines attacking them had no spirit, no challenge to offer, but the Wookiees fought them anyway because that's what defenders did. His translator formulated his response carefully, ensuring the meaning was precise: Wookiees fight with honor. Defend families. Yautja honor this. We'll stay. We'll hunt enemies of Wookiees. Tarful's roar of approval shook the council chamber. Gumbaka clasped T'Chira's shoulder again, the life debt deepening into something approaching brotherhood. But Quinlan Vos felt a disturbance in the force, not danger exactly, but the ripple of a stone thrown into a still pond. This alien warrior had just chosen a side in a galactic conflict, and the consequences would spread far beyond Kashyyyk. The Jedi's comlink chirped. General Vos, this is Commander Gree. We're detecting a Separatist cruiser moving into bombardment position over Sector 7. And sir, there's something else. Long-range sensors just picked up a ship entering the system. Signature matches, a Sith infiltrator. Quinlan's blood ran cold. A Sith ship meant Count Dooku or one of his agents was coming to Kashyyyk personally. The war was about to escalate dramatically. He looked at T'Chira, at this warrior from beyond the stars who had just pledged to fight for the Wookiees. You wanted worthy prey? Quinlan said grimly. You're about to meet something that will test everything you are. The Sith are coming, and they don't die easy. T'Chira's mandibles spread wide. His plasma caster powered up with an eager whine. Finally. A real hunt. The Separatist bombardment began at dusk, turning Kashyyyk sky into a hellscape of fire and falling metal. Turbolaser bolts rained down from the cruiser in high orbit, each impact vaporizing sections of Roshar forest and sending shockwaves through the interwoven city platforms. The Wookiees had reinforced their defensive positions over generations, but no amount of living wood could withstand sustained capital ship bombardment. Syra stood on an observation platform with Quinlan Vos and Commander Gree, watching the destruction through his biomask's enhanced vision. His tactical computer calculated firing patterns, shield coverage gaps, and orbital mechanics with cold precision. The cruiser was methodical, targeting Republic landing zones and ammunition depots with the efficiency of a machine that felt no urgency, no emotion, only programmed certainty of eventual victory. "We need to take out that cruiser," Gree said, his helmet turning toward Quinlan. "Our fighters are engaged with their screening force, but if that thing stays in position for another hour, it'll level half of Kashyyyk." Quinlan's hand rested on his lightsaber hilt, his mind reaching through the force for guidance that wasn't coming. "Our capital ships are tied up at Cato Nemoidia. The reinforcements won't arrive for at least 2 days. We have to hold with what we've got." "Then we're criffed," Gree said flatly. Clone commanders didn't sugarcoat tactical realities. "We can evacuate the civilians, but the Wookiees won't abandon their homeworld. They'll fight to the last warrior, and we'll die right alongside them." Syra's translator had been processing the conversation, his biomask's AI learning the nuances of basic with each exchange. He'd absorbed enough to understand the strategic situation. Orbital superiority meant inevitable ground defeat. The Republic forces were trapped in a siege they couldn't win through conventional warfare. But Syra had never been conventional. He stepped forward and tapped his wrist computer, projecting a holographic display that made both Quinlan and Gree turn. The image showed the Separatist cruiser in detail: shield generators, power distribution nodes, hangar bays, reactor cores. His ship's sensors had scanned it during his descent into atmosphere, and his computer had automatically catalogued vulnerabilities. "Where did you get that intel?" Gree demanded, leaning closer. "Our scans couldn't penetrate their shields for that level of detail." Syra's mandibles clicked. His translator responded, "My sensors. Different spectrum. See-through energy barriers." It was an oversimplification. Yautja scanning technology operated on principles that this galaxy's shielding hadn't been designed to counter, but accurate enough. Quinlan studied the hologram with growing interest. "You're saying you can see inside their ship?" Syra confirmed with a nod. He zoomed the display to highlight specific sections: the primary reactor's cooling system, the shield generator's power conduits, the hangar bay's atmospheric containment fields. Each represented a critical vulnerability. "Even with that information, we can't reach it," Gree pointed out. "Our fighters are pinned down, and aborting action would be suicide. That cruiser has battalions of droids aboard." The Predator's response came through his translator with an edge that might have been anticipation: "I reach ship. I hunt inside. I kill machine heart." Both Republic officers stared at him. "You want to board a Separatist cruiser alone?" Quinlan asked slowly, making sure he understood correctly. "Infiltrate it, sabotage the reactor, and escape before it explodes?" "Yes." Syra's mandibles spread in what they were learning to recognize as his species' equivalent of a smile. "I am Hunter. This is hunting." Gree's helmet turned toward Quinlan. "Sir, with all due respect to our alien friend, that's insane. He'd never make it past their point defense, let alone survive inside. One Yautja against an entire ship." But Quinlan was looking at Syra with new understanding. The Force couldn't touch this alien warrior directly, but it could show him possibilities, branching futures that spiral from this moment. In most of them, Kashyyyk fell. The Wookiees died defending their world. The Republic lost a crucial ally. But in a few, a very few, there was a thread where something impossible happened. Where a hunter from beyond the stars became the weapon that turned the tide. "How would you get aboard?" Quinlan asked. Syra gestured toward the bombardment, toward toward the turbolaser bolts that carved destruction through the atmosphere. His translator parsed his explanation: ship fires. Creates opening in shield. Small window. I fly through. Fly. You don't have a ship. The Predator tapped commands into his wrist computer, and another holographic image appeared, a schematic of equipment salvaged from his crashed vessel. Among the wreckage was a personal flight system, damaged but reparable. It wasn't designed for atmospheric insertion through hostile fire, but then again, it hadn't been designed for dimensional transit either, and he'd survived that. "You're serious," Gree said, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and disbelief. "You'd actually try it?" "Not try." Syra's mandibles clicked with absolute confidence. "Do. Or die. Both acceptable to Hunter." Tarful had been listening from the chamber's entrance, and now the Wookiee chieftain strode forward with ground-shaking steps. He roared something long and complex, his massive hands gesturing between Syra and the bombardment above. Quinlan translated: "Even though he suspected the Predator's device was handling it, he says you've earned the right to hunt as you choose. The Wookiees will honor your courage, whether you succeed or die trying. But he wants to know, why? You owe us nothing. This isn't your war." Syra was silent for a moment, his biomask's lenses adjusting as he looked from Tarful to Gumbaka, who had just arrived with a squad of warriors, to the Wookiee civilians evacuating through the lower levels. Families clutching younglings. Elders refusing to leave. Warriors preparing for last stands. His translator formulated his response carefully, reaching for concepts that transcended simple words: Yautja hunt for honor. For proof of strength. For glory. He paused, his mandibles spreading. But greatest honor, defend those who cannot defend themselves. Wookiees fight with courage. Protect families. This, worthy cause. More than trophy. More than hunt. He tapped his chest, over where his heart beat with blood that had crossed dimensional barriers. You show me respect. Treat as warrior, not monster. Yautja honor this. Pay debt with blood. Tarful's answering roar carried approval and something that might have been emotional in a species that rarely showed such things to outsiders. Gumbaka placed both hands on Syra's shoulders, and the gesture rippled through the watching Wookiees. The life debt had become mutual. "All right," Quinlan said, his tactical mind already working through the logistics. "If you're going to do this, we'll support you however we can. Gree, get a team to the Shadowlands. Help salvage whatever he needs from his ship." "Yes, sir." The commander's helmet turned toward Syra. "I don't know if you can understand this, but, good hunting." The Predator's translator caught the phrase, and Syra clicked his approval. These warriors understood. 3 hours later, in the depths of the Shadowlands where his ship still smoldered, Syra worked alongside clone engineers who had never seen technology like this. The personal flight system was a marvel of miniaturization, anti-gravity generators, directional thrusters, and an energy shield that could, theoretically, protect against atmospheric friction. "The power coupling is fused," one of the engineers reported, his helmet light illuminating the damaged component. "We can bypass it, but you'll have maybe 60% thrust capacity." Syra examined the damage himself, his clawed fingers moving with surprising delicacy through the alien machinery. 60% would have to suffice. His species had built an entire culture around adapting to disadvantageous conditions. This was merely another challenge. He integrated the flight system into his armor's power grid, rerouting energy from non-essential systems. His biomask's display showed power distribution in real time, and he made minute adjustments until the configuration stabilized. Gumbaka watched from nearby, his bowcaster resting against one massive shoulder. The Wookiee had refused to leave, claiming that warriors did not abandon pack members before a hunt. Syra appreciated the sentiment, even if the concept of pack was foreign to solitary Yautja hunters. "This plan is madness," Quinlan said from the crash site's edge. The Jedi had accompanied them, ostensibly to coordinate with the Republic forces but actually because the Force kept whispering that his presence here mattered. Even if you reach the cruiser, you'll be facing hundreds of battle droids. The odds of survival are irrelevant, Syra's translator interrupted. Odds not matter to Hunter. Only prey matters. Only kill matters. Quinlan shook his head, but there was a smile playing at his lips. You know, you'd have made a terrible Jedi. We're supposed to avoid reckless behavior. Then you bad warrior, Syra responded, and several of the clone engineers chuckled despite themselves. The flight system powered up with a low hum that built to a high-pitched whine. Syra tested the controls, feeling the anti-gravity generators lift him slightly off the ground. The thrust vectoring responded to his biomask's neural interface, translating thought into motion with barely perceptible lag. It would work. Probably. The bombardment cycle repeats every 4 minutes, Gree's voice crackled through the comms that Syra had allowed them to patch into his biomask. You'll have approximately 2.3 seconds when the shields drop for the turbolaser discharge. That's your window. 2.3 seconds. A lifetime for a Yautja warrior whose reflexes operated on the edge of superhuman capability. Syra equipped his weapons with methodical precision. Plasma caster fully charged. Wrist blades sharpened. Smart disc ready. Combostick collapsed to its compact form. And something new, a thermal detonator that one of Gree's demolition specialists had provided, powerful enough to crack a capital ship's reactor core if placed correctly. One more thing, Quinlan said, stepping closer. He held out a small device, a Republic military comlink. Take this. If you succeed, trigger it. We'll send fighters to extract you before the ship explodes. Syra accepted the device, attaching it to his armor. Extraction was not something Yautja typically planned for. You succeeded in the hunt and returned on your own, or you died and became a cautionary tale for younger hunters. But these warriors cared about his survival in a way his own clan rarely did. Another cultural difference to catalog. He looked at the gathered faces, clone troopers whose identical features somehow expressed individual concern, Wookiees whose roars carried hope and worry in equal measure, a Jedi whose connection to the mysterious Force gave him insight into futures that might never come to pass. All of them trusting an alien hunter to do the impossible. Syra's mandibles spread wide. He activated his flight system fully, rising 10 meters off the ground in a smooth acceleration that left leaves swirling in his wake. His biomask's display painted the path ahead, through the canopy, into the bombardment zone, through the shields, into the belly of a ship filled with enemies. This was what Yautja lived for. The impossible hunt. The prey that should kill you. The moment when skill and courage and honor converged into a single perfect strike. He triggered his cloaking device, vanishing from sight. And then he flew toward the sky like a ghost made of violence and determination, leaving behind warriors who could only watch and hope that their faith in this strange hunter was not misplaced. In the council chamber, Tarful turned to Quinlan and rumbled a question that needed no translation. Will he survive? Quinlan repeated, translating for the clones nearby. He closed his eyes, reaching into the Force, feeling the futures branch and split. I don't know. But I know this, if he does, the Separatists are about to learn why you never corner a predator. They don't surrender. They don't retreat. A massive explosion lit up the sky as another turbolaser strike hit home. They attack, Quinlan finished softly. The ascent through Kashyyyk's atmosphere was a calculated dance with death. Syra's flight system screamed against the pull of gravity, burning through power reserves at a rate his biomask flagged with amber warnings. The Roshar forest blurred beneath him as he climbed, the Shadowlands giving way to the main canopy, then to open sky painted orange and red by the setting sun and the flames of war. His cloaking device kept him invisible to visual detection, but he knew that the Separatist sensors would eventually register his thermal signature or the energy output from his flight system. Speed was survival. Hesitation was death. The bombardment continued its methodical rhythm. Every 4 minutes, like clockwork, the cruiser's turbolasers fired in sequence, 6 massive bolts that carved through atmosphere and shields to detonate against Kashyyyk surface. T'Sira's biomask tracked the pattern, his tactical computer extrapolating the exact microsecond when the shields would drop to allow the energy discharge. 2.3 seconds. His entire infiltration depended on threading that impossibly narrow window. At 5,000 meters, his biomask's proximity alarm shrieked. Vulture droids, Separatist starfighters with droid brains and no concept of self-preservation, had detected an anomaly in their patrol sector. 3 of them broke formation and vectored toward his position, their twin blaster cannons already charging. T'Sira didn't waste energy on evasive maneuvers. Instead, he angled his flight path into a dive that coincided with their attack run. The Vulture droids opened fire, crimson bolts stitching through the space he'd occupied a fraction of a second earlier. He rotated mid-flight, bringing his plasma caster to bear. The shoulder-mounted weapon tracked the lead fighter with predatory precision and fired. The plasma bolt caught the Vulture droid's central processor, and the fighter exploded in a ball of superheated metal and circuitry. The other 2 adjusted their vectors, their programming calculating intercept solutions that should have been impossible for an organic to evade. But T'Sira had hunted across worlds where the prey could fly, where combat happened in 3 dimensions, where the sky itself was a battlefield. He killed his flight system's thrust entirely. For a heart-stopping moment, he plummeted toward the forest below. The Vulture droids overshot, their momentum carrying them past where their target should have been. By the time their processors recognized the anomaly and began course correction, T'Sira had reignited his flight system and was behind them. His smart disc flew from his hand with a thought. The razor-edged weapon sliced through the first droid's wing, sending it spiraling out of control. It continued its arc and embedded itself in the second droid's fuselage, piercing the reactor core. Both fighters detonated nearly simultaneously. The smart disc returned to his hand, its surface scorched but functional. 10,000 meters. The air was thinning, temperature dropping. His biomass compensated automatically, but his flight system was now operating at 53% capacity. The power drain was exceeding projections. He would make it to the cruiser. Whether he'd have enough power to maneuver once inside was another question entirely. At 15,000 meters, he broke through the worst of the atmospheric interference and got his first clear view of the battle in orbit. What he saw would have intimidated a lesser warrior. The Separatist cruiser was a Providence-class destroyer, over a kilometer of durasteel and death. Its hull bristled with turbolaser batteries, point defense cannons, and missile launchers. Squadrons of Vulture droids swarmed around it like insects protecting a hive. And its shields, visible as a faint shimmer when weapons impacted them, represented technology that could shrug off anything short of a direct capital ship assault. But T'Sira's biomask had identified the pattern. Every 4 minutes, 6 points on the shield matrix dropped to allow the turbolasers to fire. The shields couldn't remain active during energy discharge, basic physics even across dimensional barriers. He had one chance. Miss the window, and he'd either be vaporized by the shields or detected and destroyed by point defense systems. His flight system pushed to maximum burn, eating through the remaining power reserves. The cruiser grew larger in his vision, its hull plate scarred by previous battles, its weapons tracking Republic fighters that darted and weaved through the defensive fire. T'Sira's internal chronometer counted down. 30 seconds to the next bombardment cycle. He adjusted his trajectory, vectoring toward the forward ventral section where the primary turbolaser battery was positioned. 20 seconds. His biomask painted targeting reticles across his vision, calculating atmospheric drag, velocity, and the precise angle needed to thread the gap. 10 seconds. The turbolasers began their charging sequence, energy building in capacitors that could level cities. 5 seconds. T'Sira killed his cloaking device, the power was needed for the flight system's final burn. 3 seconds. He became visible to every sensor on the cruiser. Alarms would be screaming. Point defense cannons would be swiveling toward him. 2 seconds. The turbolasers fired, 6 massive bolts of destruction that lit up the sky. The shields dropped. 1 second. Syra flew through the gap. The world became fire and fury. The turbolaser discharge created a temporary vacuum in its wake, the atmosphere itself torn apart by the energy release. Syra's flight system stuttered as exotic particles interfered with its anti-gravity generators. His shields flared, absorbing radiation that would have killed an unprotected human instantly. And then he was through, inside the shield perimeter, so close to the cruiser's hull that he could see individual rivet marks and blast scoring from previous engagements. His biomask's display went berserk. Targeting systems had locked onto him. Point defense cannons were tracking. He had perhaps 3 seconds before they opened fire. Syra spotted what he needed, a ventilation port, too small for a fighter but large enough for a being of his size. He vectored toward it, pushed his failing flight system to one final burst of speed, and crashed through the atmospheric containment field in a shower of sparks and vaporized shielding. The flight system died completely as he tumbled into the ventilation shaft. Emergency lighting illuminated a passage barely wide enough for his shoulders. Behind him, point defense cannons opened fire on empty space, their targeting solutions already obsolete. He'd made it inside. Now came the hunting. Syra discarded the dead flight system and assessed his situation. His biomask's internal map was updating in real time, using sensor returns to build a three-dimensional model of the ship's interior. The reactor core was 17 decks below his current position, shielded by meters of durasteel and surrounded by droid security patrols. Getting there would require stealth, speed, and violence in equal measure. He activated his cloaking device. Now that he wasn't flying through sensor-rich space, it would be effective again, and began moving through the ventilation system. His claws found purchase on the smooth metal, and he climbed with the fluid grace of a creature born to hunt in any environment. The sounds of the ship surrounded him. Machinery humming. Droids marching in lockstep. Computer systems processing targeting solutions. And underneath it all, the deep thrumming of the reactor that powered this instrument of war. His biomask switched to thermal vision, revealing heat signatures through the ventilation shaft's walls. Battle droids stood at regular intervals, security patrols, maintenance units, combat reserves. Hundreds of them, just in this section alone. Syra's mandibles spread. Commander Gree had been right, this was suicide for any normal infiltrator. But Yautja had been hunting the deadliest prey in their galaxy for millennia. Stealth was as much a part of their arsenal as their weapons. He found an access panel and peeled it open with his wrist blades, the metal parting like soft tissue. Beyond was a corridor, standard Separatist design, all harsh angles and industrial efficiency. A patrol of 6B-1 battle droids marched past, their optical sensors sweeping the passage in a pattern that left exactly one blind spot every 12 seconds. Syra dropped from the ventilation shaft during that blind spot, landed without sound, and moved along the ceiling using his claws and natural strength to cling to the overhead pipes and conduits. The droids continued their patrol, unaware that death hung above them. He needed to move fast. The longer he remained aboard, the higher the chance of detection. But he also needed information. The thermal detonator would only be effective if placed at exactly the right point in the reactor's cooling system. His biomask detected a computer terminal ahead. Standard Separatist dataport, likely connected to the ship's network. Risky to access, it might trigger security alerts, but the alternative was wandering this ship blind. He waited until another patrol passed, then dropped beside the terminal. His wrist computer interfaced with the Separatist systems, and he encountered his first obstacle, encryption that his technology wasn't designed to break. For 30 seconds, he stood exposed, his computer cycling through attack vectors against a security system from an entirely different technological lineage. His mandibles clicked with frustration. Then his computer found something, not a crack in the encryption, but a translator protocol. The Separatists used droid language processing for their systems, and his translator had been decoding similar linguistic patterns since arriving on Kashyyyk. The terminal opened. Data flooded his biomask's display. Ship schematics. Security patrols. Reactor specifications. And something else, communication logs showing that this wasn't just a bombardment mission. The cruiser was holding position for a reason. They were waiting for someone. Syra's translator parsed the encrypted messages, and his tactical computer assembled a picture that made his blood run cold with anticipation. A Sith infiltrator was inbound. Arrival in less than 20 minutes. The individual aboard was designated as requiring immediate transport to the surface. A Sith. One of these Force users that Quinlan had spoken of, but aligned with the Separatist cause. This was the worthy prey his instincts had been screaming about since arriving in this galaxy. He could complete his mission, sabotage the reactor, destroy the ship, save Kashyyyk. Or he could wait, confront this Sith, and test himself against something that defied his understanding of combat. Both options called to him. The practical warrior said complete the mission. The hunter said face the challenge. Then his tactical mind found a third option, one that satisfied both impulses. He would sabotage the reactor with a delayed detonation. Then he would hunt the Sith. And when the worthy prey was dead or defeated, he would escape before the ship exploded. Ambitious. Dangerous. Probably suicidal. Perfect. Syra downloaded the reactor specifications and deleted his access logs. The terminal showed no sign of his intrusion. He melted back into the shadows, his cloaking device rendering him invisible as he navigated deeper into the cruiser's guts. 3 decks down, he encountered his first real challenge, a squad of B-2 super battle droids equipped with sensor packages designed to detect Republic infiltrators. Their scanners swept the corridor in overlapping patterns that left no blind spots. He couldn't avoid them. He'd have to kill them silently. The first B-2 died when Syra dropped from the ceiling and drove both wrist blades through its central processor. The droid collapsed without sound, its system shutting down before it could transmit an alert. The second turned toward the disturbance, its processors registering an anomaly. Syra was already moving, his combo stick extending in a fluid motion. The spear-like weapon punched through the B-2's optical sensors and emerged from the back of its head unit. The remaining 3 super battle droids opened fire simultaneously, their wrist blasters tracking the cloaked intruder by following the combo stick's trajectory. Blaster bolts stitched through the corridor, some passing within centimeters of Syra's invisible form. He abandoned stealth for speed. His plasma caster fired twice, the superheated bolts melting through armor plating and circuitry. The 4th droid exploded. The 5th took a smart disk to its power core and disintegrated. The 6th managed to trigger an alert before Syra's wrist blade separated its head from its body. Alarms began wailing throughout the ship. His infiltration had been compromised. Now it was a race against time. The cruiser's corridors transformed into a killing field within seconds of the alarm. Blast doors slammed shut, compartmentalizing the ship into defensive zones. Emergency lighting bathed everything in crimson. And from every direction, the mechanical thunder of marching droids converged on Syra's last known position. His biomask painted the tactical situation in harsh clarity, 87 battle droids closing on his position from multiple vectors, with more activating from standby mode every second. The Separatists were flooding the zone with bodies, using overwhelming numbers to compensate for individual weakness. Standard anti-infiltrator doctrine. Effective against most species. But Yautja weren't most species. Syra abandoned all pretense of stealth and ran. Not in retreat, but toward his objective, the reactor core, now 5 decks below and heavily guarded. His cloaking device flickered under the strain of maintaining invisibility while his body moved at combat speed, so he shut it down entirely. Power conservation mattered now. He'd need every erg of energy for what came next. The first wave of droids rounded the corner and opened fire immediately. Blaster bolts filled the corridor with deadly precision, their targeting computers calculating intercept points based on his last observed position. Syra was already elsewhere. He leaped, his powerful legs launching him at the wall, where his claws found purchase on a conduit. He ran along the vertical surface for 3 strides, then pushed off and vaulted over the droid's firing line. His plasma caster fired mid-leap, each bolt finding a target, droid after droid exploding in showers of sparks and molten metal. He landed behind their formation and his wrist blades sang through the air. 5 droids fell in as many seconds, their chassis sparking and twitching as critical systems failed. But more kept coming. B-1s advanced in disciplined lines, their blaster rifles creating an overlapping field of fire. B-2 super battle droids provided mobile heavy weapon support, their wrist blasters powerful enough to punch through bulkheads. And somewhere in the chaos, his biomask detected heavier signatures, droidekas, rolling into position with their personal shields and twin blaster cannons. Intruder located in Section 7, a tactical droid synthesized voice echoed through the ship's intercom. All units converge. Destroy on sight. Syra's mandibles spread. They wanted to contain him, bottle him up in this section until sheer numbers overwhelmed his defenses. But containment only worked if the prey followed predictable patterns. He sprinted toward the nearest blast door, sealed shut, magnetically locked, designed to withstand starfighter weapons. His wrist computer analyzed the locking mechanism for 0.3 seconds, then he simply drove his combostick through the door's control panel with enough force to pierce the durasteel housing. Sparks erupted. The magnetic locks disengaged. The blast door groaned open halfway and stuck. Good enough. He squeezed through the gap as blaster fire chewed into the corridor behind him. A thermal detonator rolled through after him, one of the droid's explosives. His biomask's threat detector screamed. Syra kicked the detonator back through the gap, then ran. The explosion blew the blast door completely off its housing, along with half a dozen droids that had been advancing on his position. 3 decks to go. He found an access shaft and climbed down, moving so fast that gravity barely registered. His claws tore chunks from the ladder as he descended, his body a blur of controlled violence. At Deck 12, he emerged into the reactor section, and found himself facing a killing field designed by military engineers who understood their business. The reactor core chamber was a cathedral of engineering, a massive space dominated by the pulsing heart of the ship's power systems. Conduits as thick as his torso carried superheated plasma to distribution nodes. Cooling systems cycled millions of liters of coolant through heat exchangers. And surrounding all of it, a defensive perimeter of droids that would have made a Republic general weep. 20 droidekas in defensive positions, their shields overlapping to create an almost impenetrable barrier. 30 B-2 super battle droids forming a secondary line. And supervising everything, a tactical droid whose optical sensors locked onto Syra the instant he entered the chamber. Target acquired, the tactical droid announced, its voice carrying the cold certainty of a being that thought in pure mathematics. Probability of neutralization, 99.7%. Commence firing. The chamber exploded with blaster fire. Syra dove behind a coolant conduit as the air where he'd been standing turned into a storm of energy bolts. The conduit's durasteel housing absorbed dozens of hits before its structural integrity began failing. He had seconds before his cover disintegrated. His biomask's tactical computer ran calculations at superhuman speed. 20 droidekas, shields operational, would require sustained fire to overwhelm. The B-2s were vulnerable but positioned to provide mutual support. The tactical droid was the command node, kill it, and the others would default to less efficient protocols. But reaching any of them meant crossing 50 meters of open space under concentrated fire. Suicide. Again. Syra's mandibles clicked with what might have been laughter. This galaxy kept providing impossible challenges. He activated his cloaking device, full power, damned the energy cost, and moved. The droideka's sensors tracked heat signatures and movement, but his Yautja technology was designed to fool far more sophisticated detection systems. He became a ghost, visible only as the faintest shimmer in the air. The droids fired at his last known position, reducing the coolant conduit to slag. But Syra was already flanking, using the reactor's massive infrastructure as cover. He moved through a maintenance catwalk, then along a plasma conduit that would have cooked an unshielded human. His target was the tactical droid, that tall, spider-like commander coordinating the defense. Kill it, create chaos, exploit the opening. He dropped from above, both wrist blades extended, and landed on the tactical droid's shoulders. The blades punched through its cranial processing unit before it could transmit a warning. The droid collapsed, its limbs spasming as its systems died. The effect was immediate. The B-2S hesitated for half a second, an eternity in combat, as they awaited orders from a commander that no longer existed. The droidekas maintained fire but lost the coordinated targeting that made them truly deadly. Syra didn't waste the opening. His plasma caster fired repeatedly, each shot precisely aimed at the gaps between droideka shields. One droideka exploded, its shield generator overloading. Then another. The overlapping defensive barrier began to fragment. A B-2 super battle droid acquired target lock and opened fire. Blaster bolts slammed into Syra's energy shields, each impact draining power reserves that were already critically low. His biomask flashed warnings, shields at 40%, 30, 20. He threw his smart disc. The weapon carved through 3 B-2S in a beautiful arc of destruction, then returned to his hand. But more droids were entering the chamber, responding to the firefight. This was becoming a war of attrition he couldn't win. Time to change tactics. Syra activated the thermal detonator, the Republic explosive that Commander Gree's specialists had calibrated for maximum effect. His biomask's timer showed 15 minutes. Enough time to plant it, confront the Sith, and escape. Maybe. He sprinted toward the reactor core's primary cooling system, where his downloaded schematics indicated the optimal placement point. A droideka rolled into his path, shields flaring as it deployed. Its twin blaster cannons tracked him with mechanical precision. Syra didn't slow down. He leaped over the droideka, planted one foot on its shield generator, and used it as a springboard to launch himself toward the cooling system. The droideka's own shot, tracking his trajectory, punched through its shield from inside, destroying it. He landed on the primary coolant manifold and attached the thermal detonator with magnetic clamps. The device armed itself automatically, its timer beginning the countdown to detonation. 14 minutes, 30 seconds. Alarms throughout the ship took on a new urgency as the Separatist sensors detected the explosive. The ship's AI calculated blast radius, structural damage potential, and inevitable reactor breach. Emergency protocols initiated, crew evacuation, escape pod launches, damage control teams scrambling. They had 14 minutes to disarm the device or abandon ship. Syra's work here was done. Kashyyyk was saved, whether he survived or not, the cruiser would be destroyed. The Wookiees would live. His honor was satisfied. But the hunt wasn't finished. His biomask's long-range sensors detected a ship docking with the cruiser's main hangar, a sleek vessel with energy signatures unlike anything else in the Separatist fleet. The Sith infiltrator had arrived. And with it, the prey he'd been anticipating since Quinlan first mentioned these force wielders. Syra fought his way out of the reactor chamber, leaving a trail of destroyed droids in his wake. His shields were depleted. His plasma caster had 3 shots remaining. His smart disc was damaged, its flight pattern erratic. The combo stick had been left embedded in a super battle droid's chassis. But his wrist blades were still sharp. His mind was still focused. And somewhere aboard this dying ship, a worthy opponent had just arrived. The hunter's path led upward, toward the hangar bay where destiny waited in the form of a being who wielded power beyond technology, beyond physical strength, beyond anything Syra had faced before. As he climbed through access shafts and fought through droid patrols, his translator picked up a transmission that made every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. This is Count Dooku. All forces, fall back to the hangar. Something has infiltrated this vessel and set charges in the reactor core. We are abandoning ship. But before we leave, the voice that came through was cultured, aristocratic, and carried an edge of cold curiosity. I would very much like to meet this intruder who dares challenge the Separatist alliance. Send all available security to the hangar bay. I will deal with this, personally. Syra's mandibles spread wide. The Sith wanted to meet him. The feeling was entirely mutual. He burst from an access shaft into a corridor 3 decks above the hangar, and for the first time since boarding the cruiser, he stopped running. Ahead, blast doors were opening, revealing the massive space of the main hangar bay. Droids were forming defensive lines, falling back as ordered, creating a clear path. An invitation. A challenge. Syra checked his remaining weapons, accepted that he would probably die in the next few minutes, and found that he didn't care. This was what it meant to be Yautja, to face impossible odds against worthy prey, to test oneself against the ultimate challenge, to either triumph or die with honor. The countdown timer in his biomask showed 11 minutes until detonation. Plenty of time to hunt a Sith. He walked through the blast doors, his damaged armor sparking, his weapons ready, his predatory instincts screaming that he was about to face something that could actually kill him. At the far end of the hangar, standing alone while droids evacuated around him, Count Dooku waited. The elderly human wore robes of dark fabric, carried himself with the bearing of aristocracy, and held in his hand a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy, a lightsaber, red as fresh blood. The Sith's eyes locked onto Syra across the hangar bay. And when Dooku smiled, it was the smile of a predator who had just found interesting prey. How fascinating, the Count said, his voice carrying clearly across the distance. You're not from this galaxy at all, are you? I can feel the absence where you should exist in the Force. Like a hole in reality itself. Syra's translator converted his response, you are Sith. Force user. I am Hunter. We fight now. Dooku's smile widened. How wonderfully simple. Very well, Hunter. Let us see if your skills match your audacity. The lightsaber ignited fully, its crimson blade casting bloody shadows across the hangar. Syra's wrist blades extended with metallic certainty. And in a ship that had 10 minutes left to live, 2 predators from different realities prepared to discover which philosophy of violence would prove superior. Count Dooku moved first, and Syra's entire tactical assessment of humanoid combat was obliterated in the span of a heartbeat. The Sith didn't run, he glided, his body moving with a precision that transcended mere athleticism. The Force propelled him forward at speeds that should have been impossible for a being of his apparent age, closing the 50-meter gap in seconds. His lightsaber swept in an arc that left burning trails in the air, the plasma blade humming with the promise of instant death. Syra's combat instincts, honed across hundreds of hunts, screamed a warning. He threw himself sideways as the lightsaber passed through the space his torso had occupied. The weapon's heat was so intense that his biomask registered thermal damage just from proximity. He landed in a roll and came up with his plasma caster tracking Dooku's center mass. He fired. The superheated bolt should have ended the fight instantly. Dooku's free hand swept up, and reality bent. The plasma bolt stopped in mid-air, suspended by invisible force. For a frozen moment, Syra watched his weapon's discharge hang impossibly still, its energy contained by something his sensors couldn't properly measure. Then Dooku's fingers twisted, and the plasma bolt redirected, screaming back toward its origin. Syra dove behind a parked vulture droid as his own shot melted through its wing assembly. His biomask's tactical computer struggled to process what had just happened: matter manipulation without physical contact, energy redirection that violated basic thermodynamics. This force ability was unlike anything in his species' experience. Impressive reflexes, Dooku observed, his cultured voice carrying across the hangar. But reflexes alone won't save you from the power of the dark side. The vulture droid exploded as the force crushed it like paper, metal shrieking as it compacted into a twisted ball of wreckage. Syra was already moving, his cloaking device activating as he sought new cover. But Dooku's eyes tracked him perfectly despite the invisibility. "Your technology cannot hide you from the Force, creature. I may not sense your presence directly, but I sense the void you create. Like a shadow against starlight." The Sith's lightsaber lashed out, and Syra felt the blade pass within centimeters of his invisible form. Dooku was predicting his movements, using the Force to anticipate rather than detect. Syra deactivated the cloaking device. It was wasting power and providing no advantage. He'd have to beat this prey with pure combat skill. His wrist blade struck at Dooku's exposed side, both blades aimed for vital organs. The Sith's lightsaber intercepted them with impossible precision, the plasma blade meeting Yautja alloy in a shower of sparks and screaming metal. The impact sent vibrations up Syra's arms that would have shattered human bones. His wrist blades held, but barely. The molecular structure of the alloy was already showing heat damage where the lightsaber had made contact. Dooku pressed his advantage, his lightsaber moving in elegant patterns that belonged in aristocratic fencing halls, not battlefields. But each strike carried lethal intent, and the Sith's mastery was evident in every economical motion. No wasted energy. No unnecessary flourishes despite the apparent artistry. This was Form 2, Kashyyyk, the duelist's form, designed specifically for lightsaber-to-lightsaber combat but equally devastating against any opponent foolish enough to engage in close quarters. Syra had hunted duelists before. Fast opponents with superior reach weapons. The key was getting inside their optimal range and exploiting the microsecond it took to adjust. He feinted left, drew Dooku's blade into a parry, then closed distance faster than the Sith expected. His free hand shot out, claws extended, aimed at Dooku's throat. The Count's expression showed surprise, not fear, but genuine interest, as Syra's strike connected. Or would have, if not for the Force. An invisible barrier stopped Syra's claws centimeters from their target. He felt resistance like striking reinforced durasteel, his claws scraping against something that shouldn't exist. Dooku's force barrier held firm, and in that instant of contact, the Sith counterattacked. Force lightning erupted from Dooku's fingertips. The blue-white energy slammed into Syra's chest, and every nerve in his body ignited with agony that transcended anything his species' pain tolerance had evolved to handle. His muscles spasmed. His biomask systems went haywire. Warnings flooded his display as the electrical discharge played havoc with his armor's power grid. He was thrown backward, crashed into a support pillar, and collapsed. Smoke rose from his armor's burned circuitry. His muscles twitched with residual electrical charge. "Fascinating," Dooku said, approaching with measured steps. "Your technology is quite advanced, but your biology is ultimately organic. The Force cares nothing for your origins, Hunter. You bleed. You burn. You die. Just like any other creature." Syra's biomask flickered, its display cutting in and out. Through the static, he saw Dooku raising his hand for another lightning strike. The countdown timer showed 8 minutes until detonation. His body refused to respond properly. The Force lightning had disrupted his neuromuscular system in ways even his healing factor struggled to address. This prey wasn't just skilled, it wielded power that operated on principles his species had never encountered. But Yautja didn't survive millennia of hunting by giving up when facing superior force. They adapted. His plasma caster was offline, its systems fried by the lightning. His cloaking device was dead. His biomask was barely functioning. But his wrist blades were mechanical, unpowered beyond simple spring mechanisms. And his mind was still sharp. As Dooku's fingers crackled with building energy, Syra triggered the only weapon he had left, the damaged smart disc, still magnetically attached to his belt. The weapon flew toward Dooku, its erratic flight pattern actually making it harder to predict. The Sith's hand swept up, catching the disc in a force grip. "Did you truly think?" Syra detonated the disc's power cell remotely. The explosion was small, barely equivalent to a standard grenade, but at point-blank range, it shattered Dooku's concentration. The force lightning dissipated. The Sith staggered backward, his robes singed, his aristocratic composure cracked for just a moment. Syra used that moment. He launched himself forward, his damaged body protesting every movement, but his warriors will overriding pain and injury. His wrist blade struck at Dooku's lightsaber hand, not trying to kill, but to disarm. The Count was already recovering, his lightsaber sweeping up in a defensive arc. But Syra had learned. He didn't try to block or parry. Instead, he went low, sliding under the blade's arc, using his smaller profile and momentum to get inside Dooku's reach. His shoulder slammed into the Sith's midsection. The impact drove them both backward, and for 3 seconds, they fought in brutal close quarters where lightsabers and force powers offered no advantage. Syra's claws raked across Dooku's chest, drawing first blood through the Sith's robes. Dooku's elbow struck Syra's damaged biomask, cracking lenses and sending his heads-up display into complete failure. They broke apart, both warriors assessing damage. Dooku's chest showed 4 parallel cuts, shallow but bleeding. His breathing was slightly elevated. His eyes held new respect and something else, genuine enjoyment. "You continue to surprise me, Hunter. Most beings facing a Sith Lord either flee or die within seconds. You've lasted 3 minutes and drawn blood. Commendable." Syra's biomask finally rebooted, its display showing damage reports and a critical warning, 5 minutes until detonation. His translator was still functional, barely. His response came through in broken syntax, "Sith strong. Force strong. But Hunter stronger." It was bravado. They both knew it. Syra's armor was failing, his weapons depleted, his body damaged. Dooku showed minor injuries but remained in full control of his abilities. But bravado was all Syra had left, and Yautja warriors had faced extinction before. Honor demanded he fight until his last breath. "Your courage is admirable," Dooku said, his lightsaber held in a classical Makashi stance. "But misguided. You cannot win this battle." However, the Sith's expression shifted, calculating. "You've set charges in the reactor core. This ship is doomed. I will be leaving shortly. You could leave as well. Retreat. Survive to hunt another day. I give you this option because you've earned my respect." Syra's mandibles clicked. The offer was genuine, he could hear it in Dooku's tone. The Sith would let him escape because the Count valued worthy opponents over meaningless kills. In another context, against another prey, Syra might have considered it. Strategic retreat was part of hunting when the prey proved too dangerous. But he thought of Gumbaka's trust. Of Tarful's respect. Of the Wookiee families depending on him to destroy this ship. Of the clone troopers who had helped salvage his equipment. Of Quinlan, who had given him a way to escape if he succeeded. He'd made a promise, implicitly if not explicitly. Yautja honor bound him to that promise. And beyond that, deeper than strategy, deeper than survival, was the simple truth that he wanted this kill. Dooku represented the ultimate test of his abilities, a prey that combined physical prowess with supernatural power. Defeating him would be a trophy worth dying for. His translator converted his response with crystal clarity, "Yautja not retreat. Honor demands victory or death. Continue fight." Dooku's expression showed something like sadness. "Then you choose death." So be it. The Sith raised his free hand, and the entire hangar seemed to compress around Syra. The Force grip was crushing, invisible pressure closing in from all directions. His armor began to buckle. His bones creaked under the strain. This was how it ended, then. Crushed by invisible force, unable to reach his prey, dying aboard a ship he'd successfully sabotaged but without claiming the trophy he'd sought. Through his cracked biomask, Syra's failing vision caught something. A flicker of movement in the hangar's upper reaches. Multiple somethings, moving with purpose and speed. His audio sensors picked up a distinctive sound, the charging whine of bowcasters. Energy quarrels rained down from the catwalks above. Dooku's Force grip released as the Sith spun, his lightsaber deflecting the incoming fire with supernatural precision. But the barrage was overwhelming, dozens of shots coming from multiple angles. Wookiees. Gumbaka's roar echoed through the hangar as 20 Wookiee warriors emerged from access hatches and maintenance corridors. They'd infiltrated the ship during the chaos, following Syra's path of destruction, arriving at exactly the moment their warrior brother needed them most. The life debt demanded it. Impossible, Dooku hissed. This ship should be evacuating. It is, Quinlan Vos announced, dropping from a catwalk with Jedi grace. His green lightsaber ignited, adding its glow to the battlefield. But we decided to crash your escape party. Dooku's eyes narrowed as he assessed the new tactical situation. 1 Jedi, 20 Wookiees, and a damaged but still dangerous hunter, all between him and his ship. The countdown timer visible on nearby monitors showed 3 minutes until reactor detonation. You risk your lives for this creature? Dooku asked, his lightsaber sweeping in a defensive arc. He's Pac, Gumbaka roared, the translator in Quinlan's hand converting the Shiriwook. We don't abandon Pac. Syra pulled himself upright, his damaged body screaming protest. His wrist blades extended one final time. His mandibles spread in what might have been gratitude or determination or simply the joy of having allies worth dying beside. Dooku made his decision. He was powerful, but even a Sith Lord couldn't fight a Jedi, 20 Wookiee warriors, and a Yautja hunter simultaneously aboard an exploding ship. We will meet again, Hunter, Dooku promised. Then he was moving, force-enhanced speed carrying him toward his infiltrator. Quinlan moved to intercept, their lightsabers clashing in showers of sparks. But Dooku wasn't trying to win, he was trying to escape. A force push sent Quinlan tumbling backward. The Sith reached his ship, and its engines flared to life. Syra watched his prey escape, and part of him, the hunter's instinct, screamed to pursue. But the rational part understood. He'd accomplished his mission. Kashyyyk was saved. And he'd survived an encounter with a Sith Lord through skill and courage and the help of warriors who valued honor above safety. Time to go. Quinlan shouted, grabbing Syra's arm. 2 minutes. They ran, all of them, toward the hangar bay's emergency exit. The cruiser shuddered as systems began failing. Explosions rippled through the ship as the thermal detonator's countdown reached its final seconds. They burst into space, carried by Wookiee boarding craft that had been waiting at the hull breach. Behind them, the Providence-class destroyer became a miniature sun as the reactor core breached, a flower of destruction that lit up Kashyyyk's orbit. Inside the boarding craft, surrounded by Wookiees who were already celebrating and a Jedi who was grinning despite the close call, Syra allowed himself to relax for the first time since boarding that ship. His prey had escaped. But he'd survived. He'd succeeded. And he'd found something his species rarely experienced, warriors who would risk death to save him. That was worth more than any trophy. The victory celebration in Kashyyyk lasted 3 hours, but Syra participated for only 20 minutes before his damaged body demanded attention. Wookiee healers, skilled in battlefield medicine that combined traditional herbalism with advanced medical technology, worked on his injuries alongside a Republic medical droid that Commander Gree had assigned to assist. The droid's photoreceptors flickered with what might have been confusion as it scanned T'Chira's physiology. This patient's biological structure is unprecedented. Redundant organ systems, accelerated cellular regeneration, skeletal density 3.7 times standard humanoid baseline. I am unable to provide accurate treatment protocols. Then watch and learn, the chief Wookiee healer, an elderly female named Gaiwawa, growled through the translator. Her massive hands moved with surprising delicacy as she applied poultices to T'Chira's burns, the natural compounds already accelerating his healing factor. T'Chira endured the treatment in silence, his biomask removed for the first time since arriving in Kashyyyk. His mandibles were relaxed, his breathing steady despite the lingering pain from Dooku's force lightning. The electrical damage had been severe, his nervous system still misfired occasionally, causing involuntary muscle twitches, but his species' robust physiology was already compensating. Quinlan sat nearby, watching the process with Jedi curiosity. You're healing faster than any being I've encountered. Those burns should take weeks to recover from. T'Chira's translator was offline for repairs, but he'd learned enough basic to formulate a simple response in growls and clicks that Quinlan's experience with alien species helped interpret. Rapid healing was survival adaptation. Wounded hunters died. Evolution favored those who recovered quickly. Makes sense, Quinlan acknowledged. He was cleaning his lightsaber, a ritual T'Chira recognized as similar to his own weapon maintenance. You mentioned trophies earlier. Is that why you hunt? For proof of kills. The question touched on something fundamental to Yautja culture. T'Chira considered how to explain concepts that his species rarely shared with outsiders. When his translator came back online, one of Gree's technicians had managed a field repair. He attempted to articulate what drove his people. Trophies are proof. But more than proof. They are memory. Honor. Connection to worthy prey. He paused, struggling with basics limitations. When Yautja takes skull, we take warriors' strength into ourselves. Remember their courage. Honor their skill by displaying forever. So it's not just about killing, Quinlan said thoughtfully. It's about respect. Yes. Kill without honor is murder. Hunt without worthy prey is slaughter. Trophy from weak prey brings shame. Quinlan's expression shifted to understanding. That's why you didn't take trophies from the battle droids. They weren't worthy. T'Chira's mandibles clicked affirmatively. The Jedi understood quickly, a sign of intelligence and wisdom. Perhaps these Force users deserved the respect his instincts had suggested. Gumbaka entered the medical chamber, his massive frame filling the doorway. The Wookiee warrior carried something wrapped in woven leaves, a traditional presentation that T'Chira's cultural database flagged as significant. The Wookiee approached and carefully unwrapped the object, revealing a bowcaster of exceptional craftsmanship. The weapon was ancient, its wooden stock carved with generations of battle honors, its energy mechanisms upgraded repeatedly but maintaining the original design. Gumbaka held it out to T'Chira and roared something lengthy and formal. Quinlan translated, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. He says this bowcaster belonged to his grandfather's grandfather, carried in the wars against the Trandoshan slavers 300 years ago. It's been passed down through warriors who proved themselves in defense of the family. He's giving it to you because you fought beside him, bled with him, and honored the Wookiee way of protecting tribe above self. T'Chira stared at the weapon, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered. This wasn't just a tool, it was a piece of Wookiee history, a symbol of lineage and honor. For Gumbaka to offer it to an outsider was this too much honor. T'Chira's translator converted, his voice showing rare uncertainty. I not Wookiee. Not deserve ancestor weapon. Gumbaka roared again, shorter but emphatic. Quinlan smiled as he translated, he says you are Pack now. Pack shares honor. And you definitely deserve it, you destroyed a Separatist cruiser single-handedly and fought a Sith Lord to save their world. If that doesn't earn Wookiee respect, nothing does. Syra reached out and accepted the bowcaster with both hands, cradling it as he would a trophy of highest significance. The weapon was heavier than his plasma caster, bulkier, less technologically sophisticated by Yautja standards. But it represented something his species rarely experienced, acceptance into another warrior culture, not as subordinate or enemy, but as equal. His mandibles spread, and he inclined his head in the deepest gesture of respect his body language could convey. I honor this gift. Carry with honor. Defend pack with this weapon. Gumbaka placed one massive hand on Syra's shoulder, and the two warriors, separated by species, united by mutual respect, shared a moment that transcended language. The moment was interrupted by Commander Gree entering with tactical urgency. General Voss, we've got a situation. Long-range sensors detected the Sith infiltrator didn't flee the system. It landed on Kashyyyk's surface, in the Wawat Archipelago region. Quinlan was on his feet immediately. Dooku's still here. Why? Unknown, sir. But it gets worse. We're picking up energy signatures consistent with Separatist drop ships converging on that location. At least 4 battalions of droids, plus heavy armor. They're establishing a beachhead. Syra stood, his healing still incomplete but his warrior's instincts overriding medical caution. The prey that had escaped was still on this world, and now it was rallying forces for another assault. He's regrouping, Quinlan said grimly. The cruiser's destruction hurt them, but Dooku's not giving up on Kashyyyk. He's going to try again, but from a different vector. Tarful entered the chamber, his scarred face grave. The chieftain roared a series of commands that had Wookiee warriors scrambling throughout the city. Quinlan translated the gist, he's mobilizing every able-bodied Wookiee warrior. If Dooku wants Kashyyyk, he'll have to drown in Wookiee blood to take it. We should evacuate the civilians, Gree suggested. Get them to the northern territories while we hold here. No, Syra's translator made his voice sharp, commanding attention. All eyes turned to him. Dooku is hunter, like me. He not attack cities. He hunts specific prey. What prey? Quinlan asked. Syra's biomask highlighted the energy signatures on the tactical display Gree had brought up. His combat computer analyzed patterns, compared them to data gathered during his fight with Dooku, and reached a conclusion that made his blood run cold. You, he said, pointing at Quinlan. And me. Dooku wants rematch. Wants to finish Hunt. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Dooku wasn't planning another invasion, he was baiting a trap. Drawing out the specific warriors who had humiliated him, who had destroyed his ship, who had challenged his dominance. It's a trap, Gree said flatly. Obviously, Quinlan replied. But if we don't respond, he'll level that entire region to force us out. The Wawat Archipelago has Wookiee settlements, fishing villages, families. The Jedi's hand rested on his lightsaber. We don't have a choice. We do, Gree countered. We call in an orbital strike, level the beachhead before they dig in. With what fleet? Quinlan's voice carried frustration. Our capital ships won't arrive for another day. By then, Dooku will have fortified his position with shield generators and anti-air batteries. No, he's right. He nodded toward Syra. This is personal. Dooku wants another fight, and if we give it to him on our terms, we might be able to end this. Syra's mandibles clicked as strategy formed in his mind, a hunter's plan, not a soldier's. We go. Not army. Small team. Hunters, not warriors. We infiltrate, kill Dooku, escape before droid army knows we there. Assassination, Gree said, his clone's tactical mind immediately seeing the merit. Decapitation strike. Without Dooku's command, the droid forces will default to defensive protocols. We can mop them up with conventional forces. It's risky, Quinlan observed. If Dooku's expecting us, he'll have prepared counters. And after our last fight, he knows what we're capable of. He knows what we capable of separately, Syra corrected. Not together. Jedi force power plus Yautja hunter tactics equals advantage. Quinlan studied the alien warrior, seeing the tactical intelligence behind the predatory exterior. You're suggesting we work as a team. Coordinate our abilities. Yes. You distract with force and lightsaber. I hunt from shadows. He cannot defend against both at same time. It was sound strategy, but it required trust, something that had to be earned between warriors who had known each other for less than a day. Yet as Quinlan reached out with the force, trying to sense Syra's intent despite the void the alien created, he felt something. Not the Predator's presence, but the absence shaped like integrity. Like honor. Alright, Quinlan decided. We'll do it your way. Small strike team, you, me, and maybe. I come, Gumbacka roared, brooking no argument. Pack fights together. And I'll provide air support, Gree added. LAAT gunship on standby, ready to extract you the moment Dooku's down. Tarful rumbled approval and added his own condition, 10 additional Wookiee warriors would accompany them, providing covering fire and ensuring the strike team had support if things went wrong. Syra looked at the assembled warriors, Jedi, Wookiees, clone commander, all willing to walk into a trap because that's what warriors did. They faced danger head-on, with courage and planning in equal measure. His translator conveyed his acceptance, we hunt together. We kill Sith together. Honor shared is honor multiplied. Within the hour, they were airborne. The LAAT gunship carved through Kashyyyk's atmosphere, its hull painted with Wookiee clan symbols and Republic insignia in equal measure. Inside, Syra checked his equipment with methodical precision. His armor's systems were repaired, not to full capacity, but functional. His plasma caster had 2 shots remaining, salvaged from his ship's power cells. His wrist blades were sharpened and reinforced. And across his back, he carried Gumbacka's ancestral bowcaster, the weapon feeling right in his hands despite its alien design. His biomask was still damaged, several vision modes offline, but the basic functions worked. Thermal imaging. Targeting systems. Translator. Enough to hunt with. Quinlan sat across from him, deep in meditation, gathering his strength for the battle ahead. The Jedi's lightsaber rested in his lap, and occasionally blue sparks would dance along his fingertips, the force made visible, power that still fascinated Syra despite having felt its destructive capability. Tell me something, Quinlan said without opening his eyes. In your culture, what happens if a hunter loses to their prey? Syra considered the question. If prey kills hunter, it was worthy. Hunter dies with honor. Clan remembers. And if the hunter runs? Abandons the hunt? Shame. Exile. Worse than death. Quinlan's eyes opened, and he looked directly at Syra. That's why you couldn't accept Dooku's offer to let you escape. Not because you're suicidal, but because retreat would have dishonored you. Yes. And because I give word to Wookiees. Yautja do not break word to allies. The Jedi nodded slowly. Your people and mine have different philosophies, but we understand each other where it matters. Honor. Duty. Protecting those who can't protect themselves. This why we fight well together, Syra agreed. The gunship's pilot, a clone named Razor, called back from the cockpit, 2 minutes to drop zone. Sensors show heavy droid presence, but they're not moving. Looks like they're waiting for something. Or someone. Us, Quinlan confirmed. He stood, adjusting his robes, his expression shifting from meditative calm to battle readiness. Remember the plan, fast insertion, locate Dooku, coordinate attack, extraction before reinforcements arrive. Syra stood as well, towering over the Jedi but somehow not intimidating in this moment. They were partners in this hunt, equals in skill if not in power source. One question, Quinlan said as the gunship began its descent. If we succeed, if we actually kill Dooku, will you take his skull as a trophy? Syra's mandibles spread. Sith Lord skull. Greatest trophy in Yautja history. Would bring honor for generations. Just checking, Quinlan smiled despite the grim situation. Wanted to make sure I know what to expect when you start harvesting. The gunship's ramp lowered, revealing the Wawat archipelago below, a chain of islands covered in dense jungle, connected by natural bridges and populated by smaller Wookiee communities. And on the largest island, a Separatist beachhead crawled with battle droids, with Dooku's infiltrator at its center like a spider in a web. For the Republic, Gree said over the comm. For Kashyyyk, Gumbaka roared. For the hunt, Syra added. They dropped from the gunship into the jungle below, and the final confrontation with Count Dooku began. The jungle of the Wawat archipelago was different from Kashyyyk's mainland forests, denser, wetter, the canopy lower and more tangled. Vines thick as a human's torso hung between trees that grew at strange angles, their roots drinking from tidal pools that ebbed and flowed with the archipelago's complex water systems. It was terrain that favored ambush predators and patient hunters. Perfect for what Syra had in mind. The strike team moved in silence, Quinlan leading with Jedi senses that could detect danger before it materialized, Syra flanking with hunter's instincts that read the jungle's language of sound and scent. Gumbaka and his warriors formed a loose perimeter, their bowcasters ready, their movements surprisingly quiet for beings of their size. Syra's biomask painted the tactical situation in fragmented thermal imagery. Battle droids formed a perimeter around Dooku's landing site, B-1S on patrol, B-2S at strategic choke points, and something new that made his mandibles click with interest. 3 massive signatures, heavily armored, moving with the grinding weight of siege equipment. Super tanks, Quinlan whispered, his force senses confirming what Syra's sensors detected. AATs upgraded with enhanced armor and firepower. Dooku brought serious hardware. But the droids weren't advancing. They maintained defensive positions, weapons oriented outward, as if expecting attack from the jungle. The Separatist forces were a fortress, impregnable by conventional assault. Which was why Syra had no intention of conventional assault. He gestured to Quinlan, then to himself, then traced a flanking path that would take them through the tidal channels beneath the main droid positions. The Jedi understood immediately, underwater approach, surface inside the perimeter, strike at Dooku before the defensive lines could respond. Risky, Quinlan observed. Those channels could be trapped. Syra's biomask switched to electromagnetic vision, scanning the water for mines or sensors. Clean. Either Dooku was overconfident, or he wanted them to use that approach. Given the Sith's tactical intelligence, probably the latter. Is trap, Syra confirmed. We spring trap. But on our terms. He explained quickly. Gumbaka's warriors would create a diversion at the perimeter's eastern edge, drawing droid attention and giving the appearance of a frontal assault. While the droids reoriented, Syra and Quinlan would infiltrate through the channels. When they surfaced, they'd have seconds before Dooku realized the diversion was a feint. Seconds would be enough. Gumbaka roared quiet approval and signaled his warriors into position. The Wookiees moved through the jungle like spirits, their lifetime of navigating Kashyyyk's forests making them nearly invisible in the dense foliage. Syra and Quinlan descended to the tidal channel. The water was murky, warm, and smelled of salt and decaying vegetation. Syra's biomask sealed automatically, providing breathable atmosphere for up to 30 minutes. Quinlan used the force to create a bubble of air around his face, an application of power that still fascinated the Predator. They submerged and swam. The underwater world of the archipelago was alien even to Syra's experienced senses. Bioluminescent organisms lit their path with ghostly blue radiance. Schools of fish scattered at their approach. And in the distance, the massive roots of the Roshar trees created an underwater forest as complex as the one above. His biomask sonar painted obstacles ahead, a rock formation, a sunken droid from some previous battle, the supports of the Separatist landing platform. They navigated through carefully, making no sudden movements that might create surface disturbances. Above, muffled by water and distance, the sound of Gumbaka's diversion began. Bowcaster fire, droid return fire, the distinctive roar of Wookiee battle cries. The bait was set. Syra's sensors showed droid forces reorienting, exactly as planned. The eastern perimeter strengthened while the center and west thinned. The super tanks pivoted their massive cannons toward the threat. Even Dooku's energy signature moved, the Sith positioning himself to respond to the Wookiee assault. They surfaced inside the perimeter, behind a supply crate that provided temporary cover. Syra's biomask cleared water from its sensors and immediately locked onto Dooku's position, 50 meters northeast, standing on an elevated platform, his attention focused on the battle unfolding at the perimeter. The Sith was alone. No droid guards immediately nearby. He'd positioned himself to observe and command, confident in his force's ability to handle the Wookiee attack. Overconfident. The first mistake Dooku had made. Quinlan's hand signal confirmed he was ready. They'd discussed the strategy during the flight. Quinlan would engage Dooku directly, force against force, lightsaber against lightsaber. Syra would use that engagement to get into position for a killing strike from an angle Dooku couldn't defend while fighting the Jedi. It was the Yautja way, patience, positioning, and the perfect moment to strike. They moved. Quinlan burst from cover, his green lightsaber igniting as he force-jumped the distance to Dooku's platform. The Sith's reaction was instantaneous. His own crimson blade met Quinlan's in a clash that sent sparks cascading into the air. Jedi Voss, Dooku said with aristocratic composure despite the sudden attack. Predictable. I sensed you coming the moment you entered the archipelago. Then you know how this ends, Quinlan replied, his blade work aggressive, pressing the attack with Form V's powerful strikes. Indeed I do. Dooku's Makashi form turned aside each blow with minimal effort, his economy of motion revealing centuries of dueling experience. With your death and that creature's corpse at my feet. Syra was already moving through the shadows, his cloaking device active, his approach masked by the sounds of lightsaber combat and the continuing firefight at the perimeter. His biomask tracked Dooku's movements, calculating strike zones, identifying the microseconds when the Sith's attention would be fully focused on Quinlan. But something made his predatory instincts scream warning. Dooku's fighting style had changed. Where before he'd been elegant and precise, now he was mechanical, almost perfunctory. His attention wasn't fully on Quinlan, part of his consciousness was reaching outward, searching through the Force for something he couldn't see but knew was there. The Sith was hunting Syra even while fighting Quinlan. Your alien friend thinks he's invisible, Dooku said conversationally, parrying a strike without looking at his blade. But I learned something during our last encounter. He creates a void in the Force, a hole where a presence should be. And tracking a hole is quite simple once you understand the principle. Dooku's free hand swept out, and Force lightning erupted, not toward Quinlan, but toward a seemingly empty section of the platform 3 meters to the left. Where Syra would have been, if he'd continued his original approach. But Syra had seen the hand moving and adjusted, his hunter's instincts reading Dooku's body language in the split second before the attack manifested. The lightning seared through empty air as the Predator rolled right, his cloaking device failing under the electromagnetic discharge but his body already moving to a new position. There you are, Dooku smiled. The platform exploded beneath Syra's feet. The Sith had mined the expected approach vectors, triggered remotely, turning the entire engagement zone into a kill box. Syra was thrown backward, his armor absorbing most of the blast but his body still taking damage. He crashed into a support beam, his biomask cracking further, warnings flooding his vision. Quinlan pressed his attack, trying to capitalize on Dooku's divided attention, but the Sith was too skilled. He fought both opponents simultaneously, lightsaber dueling Quinlan while using force attacks against Syra, never allowing either warrior to gain advantage. Did you truly believe, Dooku asked, his voice infuriatingly calm, that I wouldn't learn from our first encounter? That I wouldn't prepare for your tactics? His lightsaber traced a perfect arc that forced Quinlan back. I am a Sith Lord, apprentice to Darth Sidious himself. I have studied warfare for 80 years. Your primitive hunting techniques are no match for Sith cunning. Syra pulled himself upright, his body screaming damage warnings but his warrior's pride refusing to accept defeat. Dooku was right, they'd underestimated him. The Sith had adapted, learned, prepared counters to both Jedi powers and Yautja stealth. But there was one thing Dooku hadn't accounted for. Yautja didn't hunt alone anymore. Not today. Syra's damaged translator broadcast on an open frequency, sending a signal that Gumbaka's comm unit would receive, now. The Wookiees' diversion at the perimeter had been more than just a distraction. It had been positioning. While the droids focused on repelling the Wookiee assault, Gumbaka's warriors had been planting charges on the super tank's fuel cells, mining the support structures of the landing platform, and establishing firing positions that covered the entire Separatist beachhead. The archipelago erupted in synchronized explosions. Super tanks detonated in massive fireballs. The landing platform's supports buckled. Battle droids caught in the blast radius were torn apart by shrapnel and concussive force. And through the chaos, Wookiee warriors charged, their bowcasters laying down suppressing fire that turned the ordered defensive perimeter into pandemonium. Dooku's concentration shattered for a critical half-second as his tactical superiority collapsed around him. Quinlan didn't waste the opening. His lightsaber struck low, forcing Dooku's blade into a defensive position. The Sith countered perfectly, but that defense left his upper body momentarily exposed. Syra's shot took him in the shoulder. The plasma bolt from his salvaged caster wasn't a killing blow. Dooku's force reflexes had detected it at the last instant and twisted his body, but it punched through the Sith's robes and seared flesh and muscle. Dooku's lightsaber wavered as pain lanced through his nervous system. Impossible, the Count hissed, genuine surprise breaking through his aristocratic composure. That angle, you couldn't have. Pack hunts together, Syra's translator responded. He'd climbed to an elevated position during Dooku's distraction, achieving the high ground and the perfect firing angle. Not primitive. Strategic. Quinlan's lightsaber came in fast, pressing the wounded Sith. Dooku defended brilliantly despite his injury, his centuries of experience compensating for physical damage. But he was on the defensive now, forced to retreat as two opponents coordinated their assault with battlefield communication and mutual trust. Syra fired his last plasma bolt. Dooku deflected it with the force, but the effort cost him. Quinlan's blade slipped through his guard and scored a shallow cut across the Sith's ribs. Enough. Dooku roared, and the force exploded outward in a sphere of kinetic energy that threw both opponents backward. The Sith was breathing hard now, blood staining his robes, his posture showing pain despite his attempt at composure. Around them, the Separatist beachhead was collapsing, droids overwhelmed by Wookiee ferocity, command structures shattered, tactical coordination non-existent. Dooku had lost. And he knew it. You fight well, the Count acknowledged, his lightsaber held in a guard position that protected his wounded shoulder. Better than I anticipated. Perhaps, his eyes swept between Quinlan and Syra. Perhaps this battle is yours. But the war is far from over. His free hand activated a remote, and his Sith infiltrator's engines roared to life. The ship lifted off, its weapons systems targeting the platform where they stood. He's going to level this position on his way out, Quinlan realized. Let him run, Syra growled, but his mandibles clicked with frustration. The prey was escaping again. His pride demanded pursuit, but his tactical mind recognized reality. Dooku's ship was armed and armored, and they were exposed on a collapsing platform. The Sith's infiltrator rose smoothly, its weapons charging. Then the jungle lit up with anti-air fire. Gree's voice came through their comms, gunship Razor requesting target confirmation. Do you want me to shoot down that infiltrator? Quinlan glanced at Syra, seeing the desire for the kill warring with practical necessity in the alien's body language. The Predator's response came through the translator with reluctant acceptance, negative. Let him escape. He beaten, he wounded, he knows we stronger. That is enough honor for today. It wasn't the trophy kill Syra wanted. But as he watched Dooku's ship flee into Kashyyyk's upper atmosphere, trailing smoke from Gree's near miss, he understood something his species rarely acknowledged. Sometimes the greatest victory wasn't the kill itself, but proving to worthy prey that they'd met their match. The Separatist forces collapsed within minutes. Without Dooku's command, the droids defaulted to defensive protocols that the Wookiees systematically dismantled. By the time Republic reinforcements arrived 2 hours later, the battle for the Wawat archipelago was over. Syra stood among the wreckage, his damaged armor a testament to the fight, his body healing but exhausted. Gumbaka approached and placed both massive hands on the Predator's shoulders, roaring something that needed no translation: approval, respect, brotherhood. Quinlan limped over, his own injuries being treated by a medical droid. You saved my life back there. That covering fire when Dooku had me pinned. You saved my life on cruiser, Syra countered. Debt repaid. Now we even. Is that how your people see it? Transactions and debts. Syra's mandibles spread. No. That is how I make joke. We are pack now. Pack don't keep score. The Jedi laughed despite his exhaustion. You know, for someone from another dimension, you're adapting remarkably well to our galaxy. Syra looked out at the jungle, at the Wookiees celebrating their victory, at the clone troopers securing the perimeter, at the sun setting over Kashyyyk's endless forests. His ship was destroyed. His connection to his clan was severed. By every measure, he was stranded in an alien galaxy with no clear path home. But he had allies who fought beside him with honor. He had challenged warriors who wielded impossible powers. He had hunted prey across battlefields and starships and found himself tested in ways his species valued above all else. This galaxy has worthy prey, he said finally. And worthy warriors to hunt alongside. Yautja could adapt to worse fate. So you're staying? Quinlan asked. Syra considered his crashed ship, its salvageable technology, the possibility of eventually finding a way home. Then he looked at Gumbaka, at the ancestral bowcaster he now carried, at the Wookiees who had risked everything to save him from Dooku. For now, he confirmed. War still happening. Sith still hunting. Wookiees still need defending. His mandibles clicked with anticipation. And I still need that Dooku skull for trophy wall. Quinlan smiled and extended his hand. Syra gripped the Jedi's forearm in the warrior's clasp they'd shared before. Welcome to the Clone Wars, Hunter. Something tells me you're going to make quite an impact. As the sun set over Kashyyyk and Republic transports began evacuating the wounded, Syra stood with his new pack and felt something his species rarely experienced: purpose beyond the hunt. He'd come to this galaxy by accident, crashed into a war he didn't understand, and somehow found himself defending people who valued honor as much as his own clan. The prey that was Count Dooku had escaped. But there would be other hunts, other battles, other chances to prove himself against this galaxy's champions. For now, Kashyyyk was saved. The Wookiees were safe. And a Yautja hunter had earned his place among the warriors of a galaxy far, far away. That was honor enough. For today. The weeks following the Battle of Kashyyyk transformed Syra from an accident of dimensional transit into something unprecedented in both Yautja and galactic history, a hunter who fought not for trophies alone, but for causes worth defending. The Republic granted him provisional ally status, more for political necessity than trust, but the Wookiees knew better. To them, he was Korat, the word translated roughly as, honor brother from beyond the stars. His crashed ship's remains provided Republic engineers with technological insights that would take years to fully understand, but Syra retained enough equipment to remain the predator he'd always been. The Separatists learned to fear reports of an invisible warrior who struck from shadows, leaving only destroyed droids and the occasional high-value target dead with surgical precision. Dooku survived their encounters, but the Sith Lord bore scars, physical and psychological, from facing prey that refused to die according to plan. Intelligence reports suggested the Count had become obsessed with understanding Yautja technology and physiology, ordering research into dimensional breaches and extragalactic species. It was the kind of obsession that made warriors dangerous, but also vulnerable. For Syra, the Clone Wars became the ultimate hunting ground. Each battle presented new challenges, new prey, new warriors to fight beside. He developed an unlikely friendship with Quinlan Vos, the two spending long hours comparing philosophy, Jedi detachment versus hunter's passion, Force meditation versus predatory instinct. They agreed on more than either expected, particularly regarding honor and the protection of the innocent. Gumbaka became his closest companion, the Wookiee teaching him the subtleties of their language while learning Yautja combat techniques in return. When the life debt was formally declared mutual by Chieftain Tarful, the ceremony was attended by Republic generals and broadcast across Wookiee territories, a symbol of alliance that transcended species and origin. The galaxy would remember the warrior who fell from the sky during Kashyyyk's darkest hour. Clone troopers told stories of the invisible hunter who saved them when situations seemed hopeless. Separatist tactical droids flagged any reports of designation Predator as highest priority threats. And in the Force itself, Jedi Masters sensed the void that moved through battlefields, defending the light without being touched by it. As for Dooku's skull trophy, that hunt remained unfinished. But Syra was patient. Yautja measured time differently than other species, and he had all the time this galaxy would give him. The Sith Lord was worthy prey, and worthy prey deserved a perfect hunt. Until then, there were battles to fight, warriors to stand beside, and a war that tested everyone's definition of honor. Syra had come to this galaxy by accident, but he would shape its destiny by choice. Because that's what hunters did when they found prey worth pursuing and causes worth dying for, they adapted, they evolved, and they became legends that outlasted their own lifetimes. The Force might not touch him, but the galaxy would never forget the Predator who chose to defend it. May the Force be with you. More stories await.